To find freedom in fear and truth in terror, hold guidance in nightmares, and discover healing through your deepest wounds. What if the monsters in your nightmares weren't external threats, but disowned aspects of yourself yearning for acceptance? What if the terror you feel wasn't a sign of weakness, but an invitation to explore the hidden depths of your inner landscape? Imagine each chilling sensation, each grotesque image, as a breadcrumb trail leading you back to the source of your deepest traumas, a path of integration and perhaps even the beginning of wholeness. What if confronting these shadows could unlock a life of unimaginable authenticity? For millennia, shamans, priests, and healers across diverse cultures have turned to the realm of dreams, especially nightmares, for vital insight, recognizing that the sleeping mind often holds a wisdom beyond the reach of waking consciousness. Ancient civilizations, from the Egyptians to the Greeks, viewed dreams as sacred portals to the divine, sources of prophecy, and guides for navigating life's most challenging circumstances. They believed that nightmares, in particular, were messages from the gods, warnings of impending danger, or opportunities for spiritual growth. This reverence for the dream world reflects a deep understanding of the power of the unconscious to shape our lives, a perspective that has been largely lost in modern, rationalistic societies. It was Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, who dared to venture into the darkest corners of the unconscious, illuminating the archetypal patterns and symbolic language that shape our dreams and ultimately our waking lives. Departing from Freudian interpretations, which often focused on repressed sexual desires, Jung viewed dreams as expressions of the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of universal symbols and archetypes. He believed that nightmares, in particular, were attempts by the unconscious to bring unresolved conflicts, repressed emotions, and shadow aspects of the personality into conscious awareness, and to initiate a process of healing and individuation. Jung writes, "The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul, opening into that cosmic night which was psyche long before there was any ego consciousness. At the heart of every nightmare lies a wounded part of ourselves, a forgotten memory, or a repressed emotion seeking expression. Whether it is the terror of being chased, the paralysis of being unable to scream, or the dread of falling into the abyss, nightmares confront us with our deepest fears and vulnerabilities. By embracing these shadowy aspects of our being, we can begin to heal the wounds of the past and create a more integrated, authentic self. Yet, in our modern world, dominated by rationality and a fear of the irrational, it's easy to dismiss nightmares as meaningless products of anxiety, random firings of the brain, or simply bad dreams to be avoided. However, this dismissal overlooks the profound psychological and spiritual messages they convey, the hidden wisdom that lies buried beneath the surface of fear. So, how can we learn to decode the hidden language of our nightmares and transform them from sources of fear into catalysts for self-awareness, integration, and personal growth? This exploration will delve into the hidden psychology of nightmares, revealing ancient techniques for deciphering their messages and harnessing their transformative power, a journey that may lead you to discover depths within yourself you never knew existed. We'll journey into the world of Jungian psychology, explore the archetypal figures that populate our nightmares, and uncover practical methods for dream journaling, active imagination, and shadow work techniques that can empower you to transform your relationship with your darkest dreams. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand the hidden psychology of nightmares, but you'll also have the tools and insights you need to navigate your own inner landscape, to embrace your shadows, and to emerge from the darkness with a renewed sense of wholeness and authenticity. So let's dive in and unlock the hidden wisdom of your nightmares, embarking on a transformative journey into the depths of your own unconscious mind. We often write off nightmares as mere disturbances of sleep, the product of a restless mind or a heavy meal. But what if these terrifying nocturnal visions are not random misfirings in the brain, but rather urgent messages from the depths of your unconscious, clamoring for your attention? Could it be that the very nightmares you dread hold the key to unlocking hidden aspects of yourself, unresolved conflicts, and untapped potential? Jungian dream analysis offers a radical departure from conventional interpretations, viewing dreams, especially nightmares, as symbolic expressions of the unconscious mind, a realm far richer and more complex than simple anxiety or random neurological activity might suggest. Instead of dismissing nightmares as meaningless annoyances, Jungian psychology invites us to see them as valuable communications, encoded in a symbolic language that, once deciphered, can provide profound insights into our deepest fears, desires, and psychological challenges. In other words, can nightmares serve as a pathway to self-discovery and psychological growth? And if so, how do we begin to understand their cryptic language? To truly understand the Jungian approach to nightmares, we must first grasp a few core concepts. Jung posited that the psyche is composed of three realms: the conscious, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. The conscious mind is our everyday awareness, the realm of rational thought and volitional action. The personal unconscious, much like Freud's concept, contains repressed memories, forgotten experiences, and unacknowledged emotions unique to each individual. However, it is the collective unconscious that truly sets Jungian psychology apart. Think of the personal unconscious as the files on your personal computer, while the collective unconscious is the internet, a vast, shared network of universal patterns, instincts, and archetypes inherited from our ancestors, a common reservoir of human experience stretching back to the dawn of consciousness. These archetypes, primordial patterns of behavior and imagery, reside within the collective unconscious and manifest in our dreams, myths, religions, and fairy tales. They are the universal building blocks of the human psyche, shaping our perceptions, influencing our behaviors, and coloring our experiences. Common archetypes include the hero, the shadow, the anima animus, the contrasexual side of the psyche, the great mother, and the trickster. In our dreams, these archetypes often appear as symbolic figures, representing different aspects of ourselves or the challenges we face on our journey toward wholeness. It's crucial to remember the difference between a mere sign and a true symbol. As Jung wrote, a word or an image is symbolic when it implies something more than its obvious and immediate meaning. It has a wider, unconscious aspect that is never precisely defined or fully explained. While both Jung and Freud explored the realm of dreams, their approaches diverged significantly. Freud primarily focused on repressed sexual desires as the driving force behind dreams, seeking to uncover hidden, often scandalous, wishes lurking beneath the surface. Jung, on the other hand, viewed dreams as symbolic representations of the individual's psychological and spiritual development, a process he called individuation. While Freud saw dreams as disguises, Jung saw them as attempts at communication. To illustrate, consider a dream about flying. A Freudian might interpret this as a manifestation of repressed sexual fantasies or a desire for power. A Jungian, however, might see it as a symbol of the dreamer's aspiration for transcendence, their longing for freedom, or their desire to rise above earthly limitations. Which approach offers a more complete vision of our complex unconscious? Seen through a Jungian lens, nightmares are not random occurrences, but rather potent attempts by the unconscious to bring unresolved conflicts, repressed emotions, or unacknowledged aspects of the self to conscious awareness. They are like psychic alarm bells, signaling that something is amiss within our inner landscape. A nightmare of being chased, for example, might symbolize the dreamer's attempt to avoid a difficult situation, confront a repressed emotion, or outrun a part of themselves they refuse to acknowledge. A nightmare of being trapped could speak to the dreamer's feeling of being stuck in their current life, unable to express their true self, or stifled by external constraints. But to truly understand the message, one must delve deeper. Consider the hypothetical case of a woman plagued by recurring nightmares of being trapped in a small, dark room. Initially, she dismissed these dreams as the product of stress and anxiety. However, through Jungian dream analysis, it emerged that the small rooms symbolized her stifled creativity and her inability to express her authentic self in her waking life. She was working in a job that felt unfulfilling, and she was suppressing her passion for art. The darkness represented her fear of the unknown and her unwillingness to step outside her comfort zone. What made the dream potent was the fact that the woman had, since childhood, been told to suppress her artistic desires. Only through acknowledging this suppressed part of herself and taking steps to pursue her creative passions could she begin to resolve the underlying conflict and alleviate the nightmares. What aspects of your own life are you avoiding, and what are your nightmares trying to make you face? It's also important to consider the dreamer's personal history, current life circumstances, and overall psychological state when interpreting nightmares. A symbol that holds one meaning for one person may hold a completely different meaning for another. The image of a snake, for example, might evoke fear and danger for someone who has had a traumatic experience with snakes, while it might symbolize healing and transformation for someone familiar with its mythological associations. This is because symbols are not fixed or universal in their meaning, but rather are shaped by the individual's unique experiences, associations, and cultural background. Furthermore, nightmares often feature shadow figures, representing the disowned or repressed aspects of the dreamer's personality. The shadow, as Jung defined it, is the dark side of our personality, the repository of all the qualities we deem unacceptable, undesirable, or unworthy of conscious expression. Nightmares involving aggressive or violent figures, for example, could represent the dreamer's own repressed anger, aggression, or destructive impulses. These figures are not necessarily evil or malicious, but rather represent aspects of ourselves that we have rejected or disowned, parts that, paradoxically, often hold untapped potential and creative energy. Ignoring our shadow aspects leaves us incomplete and robs us of vital energy and power. In essence, Jungian dream analysis provides a powerful framework for understanding nightmares as meaningful communications from the unconscious, offering insights into unresolved conflicts, repressed emotions, and unacknowledged aspects of the self. By embracing this perspective, we can transform nightmares from sources of fear into catalysts for self-discovery and psychological growth. But it requires a willingness to confront our inner demons, to explore the shadowy corners of our psyche, and to embrace the totality of our being. Now that we have a basic understanding of Jungian dream analysis, let's turn our attention to the specific symbols that populate our nightmares and the hidden messages they may be carrying. What are the most common symbols that appear in nightmares, and what do they reveal about our deepest fears, desires, and psychological challenges? By learning to decipher these symbols, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and unlock new pathways for healing and personal growth, a journey that, when undertaken with courage and self-compassion, can lead to a more authentic and fulfilling life. We are often told to take our dreams literally, but what if nightmares aren't simply frightening experiences, but coded messages from our unconscious, expressed through a symbolic language we've forgotten how to read? These nocturnal terrors aren't random images, but rather carefully constructed narratives designed to communicate complex emotions, ideas, and experiences that are difficult to express directly. A nightmare of being naked in public, for instance, isn't necessarily a literal fear of nudity, but a symbolic representation of feelings of vulnerability, exposure, and shame, feelings that might be buried deep within our subconscious. What if our unconscious uses symbols, metaphors, and personification to communicate these complex emotions? And how can we learn to decipher this symbolic language of nightmares and unlock the hidden messages they contain? Let's explore some common nightmare themes and their potential meanings. Consider the nightmare of falling. It could symbolize a loss of control in your life, a fear of failure, or a general sense of insecurity. Perhaps you're feeling like you're losing your grip on a situation, or that you're not measuring up to expectations. On the other hand, it might represent the need to let go of something that is no longer serving you, a relationship, a job, or even an outdated belief system. Being chased, another common nightmare theme, might point to an avoidance of a difficult situation, repressed emotions that are clamoring for attention, or a feeling of being overwhelmed by life's demands. A person who constantly procrastinates on important tasks, for instance, might dream of being chased by an unseen force, representing the mounting pressure of their unfinished business. What are your nightmares trying to make you face? Then there's the nightmare of losing teeth, often associated with a loss of power, communication difficulties, or aging. For a public speaker, this might symbolize anxiety about their ability to articulate their thoughts effectively, a fear of losing their voice, both literally and metaphorically. For someone concerned with aging, it could represent insecurity about their appearance and a fear of growing old and losing their vitality. Being paralyzed in a nightmare can reflect a feeling of helplessness, an inability to act, or being trapped in a situation that feels inescapable. Perhaps you feel powerless to change your circumstances, or that you're being held back by external forces beyond your control. This is common for individuals in abusive relationships, whether they're physical, emotional, or financial. Finally, the recurring nightmare of failing an exam often points to a fear of judgment, feelings of inadequacy, or intense pressure to perform. A person who is constantly criticized by their boss, for example, might dream of failing an exam, symbolizing their fear of not meeting expectations and their feelings of being constantly evaluated. Nightmares related to relationships and social interactions can also reveal deeper truths. The death of a loved one in a dream, while disturbing, doesn't necessarily predict a real-life tragedy. Instead, it may symbolize grief over a change in the relationship dynamics, a fear of abandonment, or the loss of a part of yourself that was connected to that person. A nightmare of betrayal by a friend might point to trust issues, a fear of vulnerability, or feeling hurt and rejected. Arguing with a family member in a dream can reflect unresolved family conflicts, communication breakdowns, or underlying tensions that are simmering beneath the surface. The feeling of being alone or isolated in a nightmare can symbolize loneliness, a sense of disconnection, or a fear of intimacy, suggesting a need to address feelings of isolation and cultivate deeper connections with others. Even environmental and animal-related nightmares carry symbolic weight. Nightmares featuring natural disasters often reflect overwhelming emotions, a feeling of powerlessness in the face of life's challenges, or a fear of chaos. Being attacked by an animal can represent instinctual drives, repressed aggression, or feeling threatened by something in your environment. Getting lost in a forest, a common motif in folklore, can symbolize feeling disoriented, lacking direction, or confusion about your life path, connecting to the archetype of the dark wood as a symbol of spiritual crisis and transformation. This can be seen in numerous fairy tales, such as Little Red Riding Hood, where the forest represents the unknown dangers and challenges of adulthood. Being trapped in a dark place, another recurring nightmare theme, can represent a fear of the unknown, a feeling of confinement, or repressed emotions that are lurking in the shadows of your unconscious. However, the meaning of a dream symbol is highly personal and depends on the dreamer's individual experiences, associations, and emotions. A spider, for example, might symbolize creativity and feminine power for one person, drawing upon its associations with weaving and creation, while for someone with arachnophobia, it could represent fear, disgust, and a sense of being trapped in a web. A practical tool for recording, reflecting on, and interpreting nightmares is dream journaling. After waking up, write down as much detail as you can remember about the dream, focusing on the sensory details, the emotions you felt, and any personal associations you have with the symbols. Ask yourself questions about the symbols and their potential meanings. What does this symbol remind me of? How did I feel during the dream? What is going on in my life right now that might be connected to this dream? Pay attention to recurring symbols and themes in your nightmares, as they often point to unresolved issues or persistent patterns in your life. A person who consistently dreams of being chased by a shadowy figure, for instance, may need to confront their repressed anger or aggression in waking life. What recurring symbols or themes do you notice in your own nightmares? In essence, nightmares speak a symbolic language that can be deciphered through careful attention to the dream imagery, personal context, and emotional associations. Understanding nightmare symbols can be a transformative process, offering a pathway to self-discovery and psychological growth. Now that we've explored the symbolic language of nightmares, let's delve deeper into the archetypal figures that often populate these dreams, revealing the universal patterns of behavior and imagery that reside in the collective unconscious. What are the most common archetypes that appear in nightmares, and what do they reveal about our deepest fears, desires, and psychological challenges, unlocking new pathways for healing and personal growth? What if the recurring characters in your nightmares aren't just random figments of your imagination, but rather archetypal figures embodying universal patterns of human experience, reflecting the hidden parts of ourselves? These aren't simply monsters lurking in the dark, but complex representations of the strengths, weaknesses, and disowned aspects of your own psyche. Understanding these archetypes is a key to unlocking the deeper meaning of your nightmares and facilitating profound personal growth. Recognizing the shadow in your dreams, for instance, is the first step toward understanding and integrating it into your waking life. What are these recurring figures, and what parts of ourselves do they represent, offering us pathways to self-discovery and integration? Let's begin with the shadow, perhaps the most commonly encountered archetype in nightmares. The shadow represents the disowned or repressed aspects of your personality, those unacceptable desires, hidden anger, dark secrets, and denied impulses that you'd rather not acknowledge. It often appears in nightmares as a same-sex figure, a menacing monster, a persistent pursuer, or even a vague, undefined sense of dread. While often perceived as negative, the shadow also holds immense potential. It can be a source of untapped creativity, hidden strengths, and raw instincts that, when integrated, can lead to increased self-acceptance and authenticity. Carl Jung writes, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." Are you allowing your shadow to fester in the darkness, or are you bringing it into the light? Consider some common shadow nightmare scenarios. Dreaming of being relentlessly chased often symbolizes your attempt to outrun aspects of yourself you don't want to confront. Fighting a monster can represent an inner battle against your own destructive tendencies or repressed emotions. Witnessing violence in a dream, while disturbing, might reflect your own capacity for aggression or the suppressed anger that you refuse to acknowledge. Imagine someone who consistently dreams of being a bully. This dreamer may be repressing their own anger, projecting it outwards in their waking life, and the nightmare serves as a wake-up call to address these disowned emotions. But what if the bully represents a strength that, although misdirected in the dream, could be channeled into assertive action in waking life? This is a pattern interrupt. The shadow isn't simply negative. It holds untapped power, waiting to be integrated. Now, let's turn our attention to the anima and animus, archetypes representing the feminine and masculine aspects of the psyche. The anima in men embodies the feminine side, emotions, intuition, creativity, and receptivity. In nightmares, it can appear as a mysterious woman, a nurturing figure, or a seductive temptress. The animus in women represents the masculine side, logic, assertiveness, rationality, and decisiveness. It can manifest as a strong man, a warrior, or a controlling authority figure in dreams. These archetypes often reflect relationship issues, difficulties in integrating feminine or masculine qualities within oneself, or projections onto others. What is your anima or animus trying to communicate? For example, a man dreaming of a demanding, critical woman might be projecting his own inner anima onto his partner, reflecting his own self-criticism and unrealistic expectations. This isn't necessarily about his partner at all, but a reflection of his own internal landscape. Conversely, a woman dreaming of a weak or ineffectual man may need to develop her animus, learning to be more assertive, confident, and self-reliant. Perhaps she's relying too heavily on others for validation and needs to cultivate her own inner strength. These anima-animus nightmares can be particularly revealing, highlighting areas where we need to develop a more balanced and integrated sense of self. Could the seemingly negative figures in these dreams actually be pointing towards untapped potential within ourselves? Finally, let's examine the trickster and great mother archetypes, figures that add further layers of complexity to our understanding of nightmares. The trickster is a figure who disrupts the status quo, challenges our beliefs, and exposes hypocrisy. It can appear as a clown, a jester, a con artist, or even a mischievous animal in dreams. The trickster's role is to bring about change and transformation, even if it means creating chaos and disruption along the way. He forces us to question our assumptions and see the world in new ways, often through humor and absurdity. Are you ready to embrace the chaos the trickster brings, knowing it might lead to necessary change? The Great Mother, on the other hand, is a powerful feminine figure who embodies both nurturing and destructive forces, representing creation, destruction, life, and death. She can appear as a nurturing goddess, a devouring witch, or a force of nature in nightmares. Great Mother nightmares often relate to issues of dependence, independence, and the life cycle. A nightmare of being swallowed by a giant woman, for instance, could represent a fear of being overwhelmed by the mother archetype, a fear of losing one's individuality, or a struggle with dependence. However, it could also symbolize a desire for complete merging and connection, a longing for the safety and security of the womb. Where do you fall on the spectrum of independence and dependence? In essence, the shadow represents our disowned aspects. The anima animus reflects relationship issues and the integration of masculine-feminine qualities. The trickster embodies the need for change, and the Great Mother symbolizes the life cycle and dependence. By learning to identify these archetypes, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and unlock new pathways for healing and personal growth. Now that we understand the common archetypes in nightmares, how do we use this knowledge to unlock their messages, leading us toward profound self-discovery? How can we use dream journaling and active imagination to decipher the hidden meanings of our own nightmares and integrate their messages into our waking lives, transforming them from sources of fear into powerful tools for transformation? Even with a solid understanding of Jungian psychology, a grasp of symbolic language, and familiarity with the archetypes that populate our unconscious, the path to interpreting nightmares can feel like navigating a labyrinth in the dark. Having all the pieces of the puzzle doesn't guarantee that the picture will magically assemble itself. Nightmares can be stubbornly resistant to easy interpretation, cloaking their wisdom in layers of fear, distortion, and seemingly nonsensical imagery. Why is it that even when armed with the right tools, we can still feel lost in the chaotic landscape of our night terrors? It's crucial to remember that there is no one-size-fits-all key to unlocking the secrets of your nightmares, no universal decoder ring that will instantly reveal their meaning. The interpretation of a nightmare is ultimately a deeply personal and subjective endeavor, intimately tied to your unique experiences, your emotional landscape, and your individual journey of individuation. The symbols and archetypes we've discussed are like a dictionary, providing a framework for understanding, but it's up to you to write the story of your own dream, to imbue it with the meaning that resonates most profoundly with your soul. But how do we begin to personalize these universal symbols, making them speak directly to our individual struggles and aspirations? One powerful technique for seeking guidance is dream incubation. a method of consciously engaging with the unconscious before sleep, essentially posing a question and inviting the dream world to provide an answer. Before drifting off, focus intently on a specific nightmare that troubles you, holding the images and emotions in your mind. Ask your unconscious for clarity, for guidance, for a deeper understanding of the message hidden within the dream's unsettling narrative. This could be as simple as repeating a question like, "What are you trying to show me?" Or, "What do I need to understand?" How does one move from intellectual understanding to practical application, unlocking the unique messages hidden within our individual nightmares, transforming them from sources of fear into invaluable guides? Dream journaling forms the bedrock upon which all other dream work is built. Like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands, dream memories fade with alarming speed, often dissolving into the ether within minutes of waking. Therefore, the immediate act of recording your nightmares as soon as possible after waking is the first, crucial step towards holding onto their elusive wisdom. But what specific details should you capture, and how can you transform a simple record of events into a powerful tool for self-discovery? The practice of keeping a dream journal should involve dating each entry to track dreams over time, recording as many sensory details as you can recall. The sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and textures of the dream world. Note the emotions and feelings that arose during the nightmare, both the obvious and the subtle, and identify any recurring symbols or themes that seem to surface repeatedly. Are there specific figures, objects, or locations that consistently appear in your dreams? Don't censor yourself or try to make sense of it all immediately. Simply record the raw data of your dream experience. Suggest using a dedicated notebook or a digital document, establishing a consistent routine for recording dreams, perhaps keeping it by your bedside to capture the fleeting images before they vanish completely. Consider, however, the impact of technology on your dream state. Does the act of typing on a screen distance you from the raw emotion of the dream in ways that pen and paper do not? The true power of dream journaling lies not just in the initial recording, but in the ongoing process of rereading past entries, searching for patterns, and tracking your psychological development over time. Your dream journal becomes a map of your inner landscape, revealing the pathways you've traveled, the challenges you've overcome, and the recurring themes that shape your life's narrative. This act of reflection allows you to see the forest for the trees, to identify the underlying currents that drive your unconscious behavior. As you record your dreams, ask yourself, what symbols stand out? Which archetypes are present? How do these elements relate to my waking life? The connections may not be immediately obvious, but with persistent inquiry, the hidden meanings will begin to emerge. Could the key to unlocking the most terrifying nightmares be buried within the pages of your own dream journal, waiting to be discovered? To delve even deeper into the symbolic landscape of your nightmares, consider employing the Jungian technique of active imagination, a method for consciously engaging with dream figures and exploring their deeper meanings. Unlike lucid dreaming, which often focuses on controlling the dream environment, active imagination emphasizes dialogue and relationship, allowing the unconscious to express itself freely. Imagine stepping back into the dream, not as an observer, but as a participant, ready to engage with the characters and symbols that populate your inner world. What previously hidden aspects of yourself will you discover? The steps involved in active imagination are relatively simple, but require patience and a willingness to embrace the unexpected. Begin by choosing a specific dream image or figure that resonates with you, perhaps one that evokes a strong emotion or that seems particularly enigmatic. Enter a meditative state, quieting your mind and focusing your attention on the chosen image. Allow the image to unfold spontaneously without forcing or controlling its development. Engage in a dialogue with the dream figure, asking questions and listening attentively to its responses. Be sure to carefully record the entire experience, including your own thoughts, feelings, and reactions. Carl Jung writes, Through active imagination, the contents of the unconscious are made accessible, and the individual is thus brought into relationship with them. However, is it possible to truly engage with these figures without projecting your own conscious biases and expectations onto them? The key to successful active imagination lies in respecting the autonomy of dream figures and allowing them to speak for themselves, rather than imposing conscious interpretations. Let the dream figures surprise you, challenge you, even scare you. They have their own wisdom to share if you're willing to listen with an open mind and a receptive heart. A person who dreams of being attacked by a shadowy figure could use active imagination to confront the figure and ask about its motivations, leading to a deeper understanding of their own repressed anger. What if the shadowy figure reveals itself to be a protector, guarding against a hidden vulnerability that the dreamer has long denied? Nightmares, particularly those featuring shadow figures or other disturbing imagery, can serve as powerful entry points into the broader process of shadow work, the therapeutic practice of integrating disowned or repressed aspects of the personality. Nightmares are often invitations to befriend our shadow, to understand its pain, and to reclaim its hidden gifts, rather than banishing it to the depths of the unconscious. In essence, we must seek to integrate these darker aspects of ourselves in order to realize wholeness. How can we translate the fear and anxiety triggered by these nightmarish encounters into opportunities for self-acceptance and personal growth? When a nightmare features a shadow figure, ask yourself, what qualities does this figure possess that I disown in myself? What fears or anxieties does it represent? Consider the possibility that the very traits you find most repulsive in the shadow figure are actually reflections of your own hidden potential, strengths that have been suppressed or misdirected. Practical techniques for shadow work include journaling, meditation, creative expression, and therapy. You might try writing a letter to the shadow figure, expressing empathy and acknowledging its pain. You could also create a piece of art that embodies the shadow, giving it a voice and a form. By embracing our shadows, we become more complete human beings, capable of greater compassion, creativity, and resilience. Now that you've confronted your shadow, what did you learn about the trickster, the great mother, or the anima animus from your dreams, and how can you apply these insights to your waking life? In essence, dream journaling provides the raw material. Active imagination facilitates dialogue with the unconscious, and shadow work offers a pathway for integrating disowned aspects of the self. By combining these techniques with a knowledge of Jungian psychology, symbolic language, and archetypes, you can unlock the hidden messages of your nightmares and embark on a journey of self-discovery. But be warned, facing your inner demons is never easy, and the process of nightmare interpretation can be challenging, painful, and even frightening, triggering repressed emotions and confronting long-held beliefs. But the journey to wholeness demands courage, and the potential rewards are immense. Interpreting your nightmares is only the first step. The real work begins when you start to integrate their messages into your daily life, actively seeking to embody the wisdom they offer. For what good is understanding if it doesn't translate into meaningful change? How can we translate the wisdom of our nightmares into concrete actions and changes in our waking lives, creating a more authentic, meaningful, and fulfilling existence, and transforming the terrors of the night into the triumphs of the day? By applying the concepts and tools provided, can viewers truly gain a deeper understanding of themselves and unlock new pathways for healing and personal growth. The journey through the labyrinth of nightmare interpretation is fraught with a common pitfall: intellectual understanding that remains trapped in the realm of thought, never translating into tangible change. We may grasp the symbolic meaning of a recurring nightmare, intellectually recognizing the need to be more assertive, yet find ourselves voiceless in the face of a difficult confrontation. Is it enough to simply know what our nightmares are telling us, or is there a deeper level of integration required to truly transform their messages into lasting change? The The crucial step lies in embodying the messages of our nightmares, integrating them into our physical, emotional, and behavioral experience. It's not enough to understand what your nightmare is telling you. You need to become the change you want to see in your life. This requires cultivating somatic awareness, paying close attention to the physical sensations and emotional responses that arise as clues to unconscious patterns. Where do you feel the anxiety in your body when you think about confronting your shadow? What physical sensations arise when you're triggered by a situation similar to the one in your nightmare? By tuning into these subtle signals, we gain access to a wealth of information that can guide our integration process. But how do we bridge the gap between intellectual understanding and embodied experience, transforming nightmare insights into lasting changes in our lives? One effective approach is to begin with small, manageable changes in behavior, rather than attempting radical transformations overnight. Instead of trying to become a completely fearless person, start by taking one small risk each day, like speaking up in a meeting or setting a boundary with a difficult person. This anchors the transformation in reality, creating a feedback loop between your conscious intentions and your unconscious patterns. Furthermore, consider creating a daily practice that reinforces the messages of your nightmares, such as meditation, mindfulness, or creative expression. Spending just 10 minutes each morning visualizing yourself successfully navigating a situation that triggers your nightmare anxieties can have a profound impact on your sense of self-efficacy. However, it's important to remember that the integration process requires self-compassion and patience. Be kind to yourself when you stumble. Integration is a journey, not a destination. The value of self-compassion cannot be overstated. Now, how might creative expression serve as an anchor of transformation? Consider incorporating elements of your nightmare into creative expression, writing, painting, music, as a way to process and integrate its emotional content. Turn your monster into a character in a story, paint the landscape of your nightmare, or compose a song that captures its emotional essence. For example, a person plagued by a recurring nightmare of being trapped in a cage could sculpt a miniature version of the cage, then symbolically break it open, visualizing their own liberation. Or they could write a poem from the perspective of the caged animal, giving voice to their own feelings of confinement. Such practices can provide a sense of catharsis and empowerment, transforming the nightmare from a source of fear into a catalyst for creative expression. What hidden aspects of your creative potential will you unlock? Often the most challenging, yet most rewarding, arena for integrating nightmare messages lies in our interpersonal relationships. Nightmares can serve as a mirror, reflecting back to us the unresolved issues, unconscious projections, and shadow qualities that impact our interactions with others. A nightmare about being betrayed by a friend, for example, could be an invitation to address trust issues in your current relationships, examining past wounds, and exploring your own capacity for betrayal. How often do we unconsciously project our own fears and insecurities onto those around us, creating self-fulfilling prophecies of conflict and disappointment? Shadow projection can significantly distort our perceptions of others, leading to conflict and misunderstanding. We often see our own disowned qualities in others, judging them harshly for traits we secretly fear in ourselves. Carl Jung writes, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort." To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. Therefore, instead of blaming your partner for being controlling, ask yourself, where am I being controlling in my own life? This act of owning one's projections is essential for fostering healthier relationships. By recognizing that the qualities we dislike in others may be reflections of our own shadow, we can begin to heal past wounds and create more authentic connections. What specific behavioral changes can you implement to promote healthier relationships? Specific behavioral changes that can promote healthier relationships include active listening, empathetic communication, setting clear boundaries, and expressing vulnerability. Practice truly listening to your partner's perspective, even when you disagree. Share your feelings honestly and vulnerably. Learn to say no without guilt or explanation. For example, if you have a nightmare about being overwhelmed by the demands of others, practice setting firmer boundaries in your waking life, saying no to requests that drain your energy or compromise your values. By consciously altering your behavior in response to the messages of your nightmares, you can begin to break free from old patterns and create more fulfilling relationships. Can facing our shadow lead to more fulfilling relationships? The transformative effects of successfully integrating nightmare messages are profound, leading to increased self-awareness, authenticity, and wholeness. By facing your inner demons, you become more complete, more resilient, and more capable of living a meaningful life. The anxieties that once haunted your dreams begin to lose their power, replaced by a sense of calm confidence and self-acceptance. Moreover, the emergence of new creative energies, increased compassion for oneself and others, and a deeper connection to the world will emerge. The shadow qualities you once disowned become sources of strength, creativity, and empathy. Indeed, they may become vital components of who you are. Now, how will this sense of wholeness impact your everyday life? Ultimately, integration can lead to a greater sense of inner peace, emotional stability, and freedom from the grip of unconscious patterns. Carl Jung viewed this process as integral to individuation, framing nightmare integration as an essential step on the path to becoming a fully realized human being. Addressing our nightmares, then, is an important step of becoming more of our true self. Therefore, what tangible transformations might one expect to see once their nightmares have been addressed? In essence, we've discovered that integrating nightmare messages involves embodying the message, practicing small changes daily, applying the insights to relationships, and embracing the alchemy of wholeness. This journey of integration is ongoing, a lifelong process of self-discovery and psychological growth. There is no final destination, only a continuous unfolding of your potential. Ultimately, nightmares aren't curses, but invitations to wake up to the fullness of your being. But we're just scratching the surface here, as the transformative power of nightmares is even more profound than what we've just explored. What will you do with the wisdom of your nightmares? How will you use them to create a more authentic, meaningful, and fulfilling life? Now, armed with these powerful tools for self-discovery and transformation, how will you begin to rewrite the script of your dreams? Interpreting nightmares can feel like navigating a labyrinth, even with foundational knowledge in hand. The symbols swirl, the emotions overwhelm, and the path forward remains elusive. How can we move beyond intellectual understanding and truly unlock the personalized messages hidden within our nightmares, making the interpretation process a reliable path to growth and integration? Dream journaling serves as our compass and map, charting the turbulent terrain of the unconscious. More than just a record of fleeting images, your dream journal becomes a living document that evolves alongside your inner journey, capturing nuances that would otherwise vanish upon waking. To maximize its effectiveness, maintain detailed entries, date each dream, record sensory details, colors, sounds, smells, note the dominant emotions, and identify any recurring symbols or themes and any figures. Keep a pen and paper or a voice recorder by your bed and write down everything you remember as soon as you wake up, even if it seems fragmented or nonsensical. Over time, your dream journal will reveal the recurring motifs and emotional currents that shape your inner world, providing invaluable insights into your unconscious patterns. As you reread your dreams, ask yourself, what archetypes are present in this dream? How do the symbols relate to my personal experiences and emotional associations? What feelings arise as I revisit these images? How many times does the anima or animus, the trickster, the great mother, or the shadow appear in your dreams? Active imagination provides the next step in understanding, inviting us to step directly into the dream narrative. This potent Jungian technique transforms passive observation into a dynamic dialogue with the unconscious, where you actively engage with dream figures, symbols, and narratives. Moving beyond journaling, active imagination creates a direct engagement with the figures of the dream, where they communicate back to you. Select a compelling dream image, enter a relaxed meditative state, revisit the dream scene in your imagination, and allow the image to unfold spontaneously, recording the entire experience in writing or through creative expression. Choose a specific dream character, close your eyes, and imagine yourself face-to-face with them. What do they say? How do you respond? It is especially important to respect the autonomy of dream figures, refraining from imposing conscious control or preconceived interpretations, and allowing them to express their own unique perspectives and motivations. Resist the urge to control the dream or force the figures to conform to your expectations. Instead, listen to what they have to say, even if it challenges your conscious beliefs. Consider a person who dreams of being trapped in a cage. Through active imagination, they could enter the cage, explore the surrounding environment, and engage in a dialogue with the jailer, ultimately discovering the source of their own self-imposed limitations. Perhaps the jailer represents a critical parent figure whose voice has been internalized, or maybe the cage symbolizes the dreamer's own rigid beliefs and expectations. Carl Jung himself actively used this technique to engage in dialogue with figures from his unconscious, most notably with a character he called Philemon, who became a guide and source of wisdom. These dialogues, as recorded in the Red Book, demonstrate the profound insights that can be gained through active engagement with the unconscious. What is the scariest dream figure that has appeared in your dreams? Now, beyond dream work, consider shadow work, where you can embrace the unacknowledged self in nightmares. Nightmares, then, are more than scary stories. They are pathways to the unconscious. Nightmares featuring menacing or disturbing shadow figures can serve as catalysts for targeted shadow work, prompting the dreamer to confront and explore the qualities, emotions, and behaviors they find most unacceptable or threatening within themselves. Pay close attention to the characteristics of your shadow figures. What traits do they possess that you judge harshly in yourself and others? These are clues to the disowned aspects of your own personality. What can you do? To engage in shadow work, consider these techniques: journaling about shadow figures, meditating on their qualities, expressing their energies through creative outlets, writing, art, music, and seeking guidance from a therapist or counselor. Write a letter from your shadow's perspective, expressing its desires, fears, and unmet needs. What does it want you to know? By embracing your shadow, you unlock a wealth of untapped energy and potential, becoming a more complete, vibrant, and empowered individual. The benefits of shadow integration include increased self-acceptance, enhanced authenticity, greater emotional resilience, and the reclaiming of hidden talents and creative potential. Also consider which archetypes are the dominant players in your shadow nightmares. Does the trickster incite chaos and rebellion? Does the great mother devour and suffocate? Does the anima animus seduce and betray? The answers will illuminate the archetypal roots of your shadow issues. Recall that the core tools and techniques for effectively interpreting nightmares are recognizing the subjective nature of dream interpretation, maintaining a detailed dream journal, actively engaging with dream figures through active imagination, and embarking on targeted shadow work to integrate disowned aspects of the self. Each tool builds on the next to become more effective. The process of nightmare interpretation and shadow integration can be challenging, emotionally demanding, and even frightening at times. But remember that the potential for personal growth, healing, and transformation lies on the other side of these challenges. It's like cleaning out a wound, painful at first, but necessary for healing. Understanding your nightmares is only half the battle. The real challenge lies in applying their wisdom to your waking life. How do we translate these insights into concrete actions, creating lasting positive changes in our lives and fostering a more integrated and fulfilling existence? The mere understanding of a nightmare's message rarely equates to its complete integration. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking you've deciphered the code, solved the puzzle, and conquered the beast, but true integration goes far beyond intellectual assent. How many times have you known you should do something, but found yourself unable to act? It's like knowing how to swim, poring over manuals and watching videos, yet still finding yourself sinking in the deep end of the pool. This phenomenon, where the dreamer believes they have resolved the nightmare's message, but hasn't truly embodied the necessary changes, is what we call false integration. It's a deceptive imitation of genuine transformation, a superficial understanding that masks deeper, unresolved issues. A person might intellectually understand their fear of intimacy, tracing it back to childhood experiences and identifying the defense mechanisms they employ, yet they continue to sabotage relationships due to deeply ingrained, unconscious patterns. The mind understands, but the heart and the body have not followed. This disconnect creates a persistent undercurrent of unease, a sense that something is still amiss, even if the conscious mind believes the problem is solved. What are the telltale signs of this false integration? Keep an eye out for these subtle indicators. The continued recurrence of similar nightmares, persistent emotional triggers that seem disproportionate to the situation, ongoing relationship difficulties that mirror the patterns revealed in the nightmares, or a lingering sense of unease or dissatisfaction despite conscious efforts to change. You may find yourself saying, "I know I shouldn't be afraid," yet the fear persists, a clear sign that the integration is incomplete. The nightmare may evolve, but the underlying theme continues to manifest. The monster changes its form, but the feeling of being pursued remains. How can we differentiate between genuine integration and its deceptive imitation, ensuring that our efforts lead to lasting transformation rather than superficial understanding? Resistance is a natural, even predictable, part of the integration process. It acts as a defense mechanism, a shield erected by the ego to protect itself from the discomfort of change. Change, by its very nature, disrupts the status quo, challenging our established beliefs, behaviors, and emotional responses. The ego, clinging to its familiar patterns, often resists this disruption, preferring the known pain of the present to the uncertain promise of the future. This resistance can manifest in a variety of ways, often subtle and insidious, making it difficult to detect. Common forms of resistance include denial, "The nightmare wasn't really about me," rationalization, "I understand the message, but it's not practical to change," intellectualization, "I can analyze the nightmare endlessly, but I don't feel anything," avoidance, "I'd rather not think about the nightmare at all," and emotional numbing, "I don't feel anything when I think about the nightmare." Consider a person who dreams repeatedly of being confronted by an authority figure representing their own inner critic. They might intellectualize the message, understanding that they are being too hard on themselves, but they continue to berate themselves internally, dismissing their achievements and focusing on their perceived flaws. Or they might simply avoid thinking about the dream altogether, burying it in the depths of their unconscious, hoping it will disappear. This is akin to trying to bury a beach ball in the sand. It will inevitably pop back up. What strategies can we use to identify and overcome this resistance? Start by paying close attention to your physical sensations. If you notice yourself tensing up, feeling anxious, or experiencing physical discomfort when you think about a specific nightmare image or theme, that's a clear sign that you're encountering resistance. Journaling about uncomfortable emotions can also be helpful, allowing you to explore the feelings you're trying to avoid. Seeking feedback from trusted friends or therapists can provide valuable perspective, helping you identify blind spots and challenge your rationalizations. And perhaps most importantly, practice self-compassion. It's okay to feel resistant. Acknowledge it, accept it, and then gently nudge yourself forward. Resistance is like a muscle. The more you work through it, the stronger you become. Let's challenge the conventional perception of nightmares as solely negative experiences. They also serve as potential treasure troves, revealing hidden strengths, untapped resources, and unexpected allies within the depths of your unconscious. Even in the darkest nightmare, there are glimmers of hope, sparks of resilience waiting to be ignited. The ability to identify and cultivate these resources can transform your relationship with nightmares, turning them from sources of fear and anxiety into powerful tools for self-discovery and empowerment. What if nightmares are not warnings of impending doom, but guides to hidden strength? Resource identification involves actively searching for positive elements within the nightmare narrative. Look for a supportive figure, a moment of courage, a symbol of hope, a sense of determination, or any other element that suggests resilience or strength. Even in a nightmare of being chased, the ability to run fast could be seen as a resource, a symbol of strength and agility, of resourcefulness and determination. Perhaps you are quick on your feet, or are smarter than you think. Or in a dream where you are lost in a forest, does a helpful guide show up? If so, this could represent your inner wisdom attempting to help you in waking life. Jung referred to these figures as mana personalities, sources of power and guidance from the unconscious. These resources can be consciously cultivated and integrated into waking life, providing a source of strength and resilience in the face of challenges. For example, if the nightmare features a wise old woman offering guidance, the dreamer could cultivate their own inner wisdom through meditation, journaling, or seeking mentorship from a trusted elder. If the nightmare includes a symbol of hope, such as a blooming flower in a barren landscape, the dreamer could incorporate that symbol into their daily life, using it as a reminder of their own potential for growth and renewal. This approach also relates to the archetypes. Look for helpful archetypal figures in nightmares and their characteristics. If you are lost in a forest, does a helpful guide show up? If so, this could represent your inner wisdom attempting to help you in waking life. Integrating nightmare messages is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process, a lifelong journey that unfolds over time, requiring sustained effort, self-reflection, and a commitment to personal growth. It's not a sprint, but a marathon, a winding path with both smooth stretches and treacherous climbs. To embark on this journey effectively, consider creating a long-term integration plan, outlining specific goals, strategies, and timelines for embodying the insights gained from nightmare analysis. This plan should be tailored to your individual needs, preferences, and circumstances, reflecting your unique goals and aspirations. Your integration plan might include daily meditation to cultivate self-awareness, weekly therapy sessions to explore unconscious patterns, monthly creative expression workshops to tap into your imagination, and annual retreats focused on self-discovery. Regularly review and revise your integration plan, adapting it to changing circumstances and evolving needs. As you grow and evolve, your integration plan will need to adapt to reflect your new understanding and challenges. Just as a gardener tends to their plants, nurturing them through the seasons, so too must you tend to your inner landscape, adapting your approach as you grow and evolve. This integration process is, in essence, Jung's concept of individuation, framing it as an essential step on the path to becoming a fully realized human being, embracing both the light and the shadow, the conscious and the unconscious, integrating all aspects of yourself into a unified whole. What does it mean to be you? Are the nightmares showing you parts of yourself you need to embrace? Individuation is the journey of becoming who you truly are, not who you think you should be. It's a process of self-discovery, self-acceptance, and self-actualization, guided by the wisdom of the unconscious. In essence, effective integration involves recognizing and overcoming resistance, identifying and cultivating inner resources, creating a long-term integration plan, and embracing the journey of individuation. The road to wholeness is paved with both joy and sorrow, light and shadow. Embrace it all. While the path of integration is not always easy or comfortable, the transformative potential of embracing the challenges and persevering through the difficult times is immense. Once we've begun to integrate the messages of our nightmares, how can we maintain this progress over the long term, preventing old patterns from resurfacing and continuing to deepen our connection to the wisdom of the unconscious? You are now equipped with the next steps to take on your journey. Have you ever noticed certain characters appearing again and again in your nightmares? These aren't just random figures flitting through the background. These are recurring nightmare figures, actors in the theater of your unconscious, and they often hold the key to understanding deeper psychological complexes or relational patterns playing out in your waking life. They aren't just things or set dressing, but active participants in the drama. Instead of simply experiencing a feeling of falling, as discussed in the previous section, consider, what is the thing that is causing you to fall? What does that represent? Who are these recurring characters in our nightmares, and what deeper aspects of our psyche do they represent? Let's begin with the persecutor figure. This is a recurring character who actively threatens, attacks, or causes harm to the dreamer, triggering feelings of fear, vulnerability, and helplessness. The persecutor can manifest in many forms: a monstrous creature lurking in the shadows, a violent criminal brandishing a weapon, a demonic entity spewing threats, or even a seemingly ordinary person with malevolent intent hidden behind a veneer of normalcy. Consider the film Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger is the ultimate persecutor figure, invading the dreams of teenagers and turning their fears into deadly realities. The psychological significance of the persecutor figure is multifaceted. It can represent external threats, such as a toxic relationship or a dangerous environment. However, it can also symbolize repressed anger, internalized trauma, or the dreamer's own self-destructive tendencies turned outward. If the persecutor resembles a past abuser, this may signify unresolved trauma that continues to haunt the dreamer's unconscious. Conversely, if the persecutor mirrors the dreamer's inner critic, this may indicate low self-esteem and a tendency towards self-sabotage. Common persecutor nightmare scenarios include being chased relentlessly through dark alleys, being physically assaulted and unable to defend oneself, being verbally abused and demeaned, or being held captive in a confined space, stripped of agency and control. Consider the case of a woman named Sarah who repeatedly dreamed of being chased by a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Initially, she interpreted this figure as a manifestation of her general anxiety and fear of the unknown. However, through dream analysis, it became clear that the shadowy figure represented her own inner critic, a relentless voice that constantly judged and berated her for her perceived shortcomings. This realization allowed Sarah to begin challenging her negative self-talk and cultivate a more compassionate and accepting relationship with herself. Understanding the persecutor allowed her to understand herself. Now, let's turn to another common recurring figure, the abandoner. This character leaves the dreamer feeling alone, rejected, or emotionally deprived, triggering feelings of sadness, grief, and profound insecurity. The abandoner can manifest as a parent who neglects their child, a partner who abruptly ends a relationship, a friend who betrays a confidence, or even a supernatural entity who withdraws their love, support, or presence without explanation. This figure touches upon deep-seated fears related to attachment. The psychological significance of the abandoner figure often relates to past experiences of abandonment, fears of intimacy, and difficulties in forming secure attachments, all of which can affect the dreamer's ability to form healthy relationships in waking life. It can also represent the dreamer's own tendency to push others away, perhaps out of fear of getting hurt or being vulnerable. Attachment theory posits that early childhood experiences with caregivers shape our ability to form secure attachments in adulthood. If a child experiences inconsistent or unreliable caregiving, they may develop an anxious or avoidant attachment style, leading to fears of abandonment and difficulties in trusting others. Common abandoner nightmare scenarios include being left behind in a crowded place, being ignored or dismissed by loved ones, being betrayed by someone you trust, or being replaced by someone else in a relationship. Consider the case of a man named David who repeatedly dreamed of being left at the altar on his wedding day. He had been engaged to be married, but called it off because of what he said was cold feet. Initially, he dismissed these dreams as simple anxiety about commitment. However, through therapy, he discovered that these nightmares revealed underlying fears of abandonment stemming from his father leaving his family when he was a child. This realization allowed David to begin addressing his fears of intimacy and commitment, and to eventually form a healthy and lasting relationship. In contrast to the threatening figures of the persecutor and the abandoner, nightmares can also feature the helper figure. This recurring character offers guidance, support, or protection to the dreamer, providing a sense of hope, encouragement, and resilience in the face of adversity. The helper can manifest as a wise old man offering sage advice, a nurturing mother providing comfort and reassurance, a spirit guide offering cryptic clues, or even a seemingly ordinary person who offers unexpected assistance in a moment of crisis. These figures often embody the qualities we need most in our waking lives. The psychological significance of the helper figure lies in its potential to represent inner wisdom, untapped strengths, the dreamer's capacity for self-compassion, or the presence of supportive forces in their life. The helper can be seen as a manifestation of the inner child, representing the dreamer's need for self-nurturing and self-acceptance. The concept of the inner child suggests that we all carry within us the experiences and emotions of our childhood selves. When we neglect or abandon our inner child, we may experience feelings of loneliness, insecurity, and low self-esteem. Common helper nightmare scenarios include receiving guidance from a wise figure in a moment of confusion, being rescued from danger by a benevolent stranger, finding unexpected strength in a moment of crisis, or experiencing a sense of unconditional love and acceptance from a nurturing presence. Imagine a person dreaming of being lost in a dark and menacing forest, feeling overwhelmed and hopeless. Suddenly, a wise animal guide appears, offering to lead them out of the forest and back to safety. This animal guide could represent the dreamer's own intuition and inner wisdom, guiding them through difficult times and helping them find their way back to themselves. Carl Jung spoke extensively about the importance of listening to one's inner voice and trusting one's intuition, even when it goes against conventional wisdom. In essence, the helper figure demonstrates the potential for light even within our own shadows. In essence, we've explored three key recurring nightmare figures: the persecutor, representing external and internal threats; the abandoner, embodying fears of isolation and rejection; and the helper, offering guidance and support from the unconscious. Each of these figures carries a unique psychological message, reflecting the dreamer's personal experiences, emotional wounds, and untapped potential. These figures can overlap, shift roles, or even transform into one another within the same dream, reflecting the complexity and fluidity of the unconscious. A persecutor figure, for example, might reveal their own vulnerability and need for help, prompting the dreamer to question their initial judgment and cultivate empathy. Now that we have met these recurring nightmare figures, how do we engage with them and integrate the messages they offer? The next step involves actively engaging with these recurring figures through dream journaling, active imagination, and shadow work, practical techniques that we will soon discuss. These methods offer a means to decipher the complex symbolism and tap into the wisdom embedded within our nightmares. How can we use these recurring figures as a map to navigate our inner landscape, identify our deepest wounds, and unlock our greatest potential for healing and transformation? These recurring figures now provide a means for self-discovery that you can tap into. Recurring nightmare figures can be terrifying, triggering intense fear and anxiety. Encountering them can feel like facing down your worst demons night after night. But what if these frightening figures weren't simply tormentors, but messengers from your unconscious, offering valuable insights into your hidden self? How can we shift our perspective from fear and avoidance to curiosity and self-compassion, preparing ourselves to meet these figures with courage and openness? It begins with recognizing that these encounters are opportunities for growth, not punishments. Therefore, it is essential to cultivate a mindset of psychological safety before diving into the depths of your nightmares. Psychological safety in this context means creating a safe space, both internally and externally, to engage with these potentially overwhelming figures. This might involve setting aside dedicated time for dream work, choosing a calming and comfortable environment, and ensuring you have a support system in place, whether it's a trusted friend, therapist, or support group. Think of it as preparing a safe laboratory for conducting a delicate experiment. You wouldn't perform a volatile chemical reaction in a chaotic environment, so why would you approach your inner demons without proper precautions? Beyond creating a safe space, it's crucial to establish clear intentions before engaging with recurring nightmare figures. What do you hope to learn from this encounter? What kind of relationship do you want to build with this figure? What specific changes do you want to see in your waking life as a result of this inner work? Are you hoping to understand the persecutor's motivations, negotiate with the abandoner to understand their reasons, or seek guidance from the helper figure to glean some wisdom? The more clearly you define your intentions, the more focused and productive your engagement with these figures will be. As Jung himself noted, the unconscious responds to clear direction and intention. Having properly prepared yourself, the first practical step in engaging with recurring nightmare figures is to meticulously track their evolution through dream journaling. But we're not just talking about jotting down a few vague details before you forget the dream. We're talking about creating a detailed chronicle of each figure's appearance, behavior, and impact on your emotional state. How does their appearance change over time? How do their behaviors evolve from dream to dream? And perhaps most importantly, how do your feelings toward them shift as you continue to encounter them? Are they growing more or less frightening? Are you beginning to feel a flicker of understanding or even empathy? Consider creating a character sheet for each recurring figure, updating it with each new dream entry. Record their physical appearance, emotional state, relationship to you in the dream, and any messages or insights they convey. Note the specific details, the tone of their voice, the way they move, and any symbols associated with them. This detailed record will allow you to track patterns in the figure's behavior, identify potential triggers, and monitor your own emotional responses over time. Is the persecutor more likely to appear when you are feeling stressed or overwhelmed in waking life? Does the abandoner's presence coincide with feelings of low self-worth or fear of intimacy? The more data you collect, the clearer the patterns will become, and the closer you will get to understanding the deeper meaning behind the figure's presence. By tracking these patterns, you can then ask yourself, what unmet needs or unresolved conflicts might be driving the persecutor's aggression, the abandoner's withdrawal, or the helper's unwavering support? As valuable as dream journaling can be, it's important to move beyond simply recording your nightmares to actively engaging with the figures within them. And that is where active imagination comes in. Active imagination, as developed by Jung, provides a dynamic tool for entering into a direct dialogue with recurring nightmare figures, transforming them from terrifying antagonists into potential allies and sources of wisdom. Active imagination is more than just passively observing the figure in your mind's eye. It's about consciously entering into a conversation, asking questions, and exploring their motivations. It's about inviting the unconscious to speak directly to your conscious mind. To initiate and maintain a meaningful dialogue, begin by creating a safe and comfortable space, free from distractions. Ground yourself in the present moment through deep breathing or meditation, and then invite the figure to appear before you in your imagination. Acknowledge its presence, and then begin with open-ended questions, such as, I see you, persecutor. I acknowledge your presence. What do you want me to know? What are you trying to protect me from? Or, abandoner, why have you left me? What am I not seeing? It is critical to respect the autonomy of the figure, allowing it to express its own perspectives and motivations, even if they are challenging or uncomfortable. Resist the urge to control the figure or force it to conform to your expectations. Instead, listen carefully to what it has to say, even if it challenges your conscious beliefs or triggers painful emotions. As Marie-Louise von Franz, a close colleague of Jung, wrote, "The shadow is a living part of the personality and therefore wants to live with you in some way." She said that it is essential to befriend it, not fight it, in order to achieve wholeness. Consider the case of a person who repeatedly dreamed of being tormented by a demonic persecutor. Through active imagination, they initiated a dialogue with this figure and discovered that it was actually a protector, trying to shield them from a painful truth they were unwilling to face. The demon's grotesque appearance and violent behavior were simply a reflection of the dreamer's own fear and resistance to confronting this truth. By engaging with the persecutor, the dreamer was able to integrate this previously disowned aspect of themselves and experience a profound sense of healing and liberation. Ultimately, our engagement with recurring nightmare figures connects to the broader process of shadow work, one of the most challenging, yet potentially transformative, aspects of Jungian psychology. Recurring nightmare figures often represent disowned aspects of the dreamer's own personality, those qualities, emotions, and behaviors that they find most unacceptable or threatening in themselves. These are the aspects that have been banished to the shadow, the dark and hidden realm of the unconscious. For instance, if you are being pursued by an angry mob in your nightmares, what aspects of that anger do you suppress in yourself in your waking life? Are you afraid of expressing your rage, asserting your boundaries, or standing up for yourself? To use recurring nightmare figures as mirrors, reflecting back to you the qualities you find most unacceptable, start by identifying the specific traits and behaviors that you find most disturbing or threatening in the figure. Then, ask yourself whether you might possess those same traits or behaviors, even in a latent or unconscious form. Write a letter from the persecutor's point of view, justifying its actions and explaining what it is trying to achieve. Meditate on the qualities of the figure, allowing yourself to feel its emotions and experience its perspective. Express its energies through creative outlets, such as painting, writing, or dancing. And if needed, seek guidance from a therapist or counselor who can help you navigate the complexities of your shadow. As you engage in this process, remember the importance of self-compassion and acceptance. Embracing one's shadow is a lifelong journey, not a destination. Be kind to yourself as you explore the darker aspects of your personality, and remember that everyone has a shadow, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. What is crucial is to understand its existence and to learn how to integrate it consciously into your life. We've explored key steps involved in working with recurring nightmare figures: psychological preparation, detailed dream journaling, dynamic active imagination, and profound shadow work. By integrating these processes into your life, you can shift your relationship with these figures from one of fear and avoidance to one of understanding and acceptance. By making peace with the persecutor, you unlock your own inner strength. By understanding the abandoner, you heal past wounds. By embracing the helper, you cultivate self-compassion. Indeed, the figures can even shift roles or perhaps even become allies, offering guidance and support from within. But working with your recurring nightmare figures is only the beginning. The true transformation happens when you translate their wisdom into your waking life. How can we take the insights gained from these encounters and turn them into concrete actions, creating lasting positive changes in our behavior, relationships, and overall sense of self? How can we translate the insights gained from our encounters with recurring nightmare figures into concrete actions, creating lasting positive changes in our lives and fostering a more integrated and fulfilling existence. It's one thing to understand the theory, but quite another to view the monstrous figure that haunts your dreams, the one that makes your heart pound and your breath catch, as a potential ally. How can we possibly shift our perspective to see such frightening figures not as enemies, but as messengers or even helpers in disguise? The key lies in a conscious technique known as cognitive reframing. Cognitive reframing involves actively challenging your negative assumptions and interpretations of the recurring figure, consciously choosing to view it from a different angle. It's not about denying the figure's frightening aspects, nor is it about excusing any harmful behaviors it may exhibit in your dreams. Instead, it's about expanding your understanding of its role, its motivations, and its potential positive intentions, however hidden they may be. It requires a willingness to challenge your own biases, to question your initial reactions, and to embrace a more nuanced, complex view of your own unconscious. You're not excusing their behavior, but you are trying to understand it. This shift in perspective is a conscious choice, one that demands a certain level of courage and self-awareness. It means acknowledging that your initial interpretation of the figure might be incomplete, biased, or even entirely wrong. It requires you to step back from your fear and approach the figure with curiosity, empathy, and a genuine desire to understand its perspective. It is not about ignoring the fear, but about overriding your natural response to fear with conscious curiosity and courage. How, then, can we actively reframe our understanding of recurring nightmare figures, transforming them from antagonists into potential sources of insight, healing, and even support? To successfully reframe recurring nightmare figures, it is necessary to understand specific strategies for understanding the figures. One such strategy involves identifying their potential protective function. Even the most terrifying persecutor figure might be trying to protect you from something, albeit in a misguided or harmful way. Consider the possibility that it's acting as a distorted guardian, alerting you to a danger you're not consciously aware of. Another strategy focuses on recognizing their unmet needs. What needs is the abandoner failing to fulfill in itself, and how does that relate to your own unmet needs? Perhaps the figure is mirroring your own feelings of neglect or abandonment, highlighting a need for greater self-care or stronger boundaries in your relationships. Yet another powerful strategy involves exploring their connection to your own disowned qualities. What qualities does the helper embody that you struggle to embrace in yourself? Perhaps the figure represents a strength, a talent, or a quality that you've suppressed or denied in your waking life. To truly challenge your negative assumptions about the figure, ask yourself some difficult questions. What if the figure is not intentionally malicious? What if its actions are driven by fear, pain, or a misguided attempt to help? What if it is simply trying to get your attention, to deliver a message that you've been ignoring? Instead of assuming the persecutor is evil, consider the possibility that it is trying to protect you from a perceived threat, even if its methods are misguided or harmful. Perhaps it's trying to prevent you from making a mistake, entering a dangerous situation, or getting hurt in a relationship. What if its aggression is simply a reflection of your own suppressed anger, which needs to be acknowledged and expressed in a healthier way? This is where compassionate inquiry becomes essential. Compassionate inquiry involves approaching the figure with empathy, curiosity, and a genuine desire to understand its perspective, even if it seems initially incomprehensible or threatening. Instead of judging the abandoner for leaving, try to understand its own fears of intimacy and commitment, and how those fears might be contributing to its behavior. Perhaps the figure is mirroring your own anxieties about vulnerability, your fear of being hurt or rejected in relationships. What if its abandonment is actually a reflection of your own tendency to push people away, to sabotage your own chances of connection and intimacy? In each of these examples, the goal is to shift from a position of judgment and fear to one of understanding and compassion. recognizing that even the most frightening figures are ultimately reflections of your own inner landscape. Consider the case of Sarah, who for years had been plagued by a recurring nightmare of a monstrous figure chasing her through a dark forest. Initially, she experienced the figure as purely evil, a terrifying embodiment of her deepest fears. However, after learning about cognitive reframing, she decided to approach the figure with curiosity and compassion. Through active imagination, she entered into a dialogue with the monster and asked it directly, "What do you want? Why are you chasing me?" To her surprise, the monster revealed that it was actually trying to protect her from being taken advantage of by others. It represented her own repressed anger, which she had always been taught to suppress. By acknowledging and integrating her anger, learning to assert her boundaries and stand up for herself, she was able to transform the monster into a powerful ally, a source of strength and protection. The figure no longer chased her, but instead stood beside her, a fierce guardian ready to defend her from harm. Then there is the case of Michael, who was haunted by dreams of a parent figure constantly leaving him, abandoning him in various locations. Through compassionate inquiry, he eventually realized that the parent was actually mirroring his own deep-seated fear of commitment. He realized he was the one abandoning his relationships before they even began, afraid of getting hurt. By confronting this fear in himself, by learning to trust others and allow himself to be vulnerable, he was able to transform the abandoner figure into a symbol of self-sufficiency and independence. The figure no longer left him, but instead stood as a reminder of his own strength and resilience, his ability to navigate life's challenges on his own terms. The tables had turned. Finally, we can look at the story of Emily. Emily was repeatedly rescued in her dreams by a mysterious figure in white, always appearing at the last moment to save her from danger. Initially, she saw the figure as a benevolent savior, a symbol of hope and guidance. However, after analyzing her dreams, she realized that the figure actually represented peace and tranquility, qualities she rarely allowed herself to experience in her waking life. She was constantly striving, pushing herself to achieve more, and never allowing herself to rest or simply be present in the moment. By recognizing this imbalance, she began to incorporate meditation and mindfulness practices into her daily life, learning to value a slower-paced, more introspective lifestyle. The figure in white no longer appeared as a rescuer, but as a constant companion, a gentle reminder to cultivate inner peace and tranquility. In each of these cases, the transformation was achieved through a combination of challenging negative assumptions, identifying positive intentions, exploring unmet needs, and approaching the figures with compassionate inquiry. The monstrous persecutor became a protector, the abandoning parent became a symbol of self-reliance, and the rescuing savior became a reminder of inner peace. By embracing these figures, the dreamers were ultimately embracing disowned aspects of themselves, leading to greater wholeness and self-acceptance. This aligns with Jung's concept of individuation, where the integration of the shadow, the acceptance of the previously unacceptable, leads to greater wholeness. The transformation of nightmare figures can be seen as a key component of the hero's journey, a symbolic representation of the individual's quest for self-discovery and personal growth. As the hero confronts and integrates the shadow, they gain access to previously untapped sources of power and wisdom, ultimately returning to the world transformed. But what happens after the transformation? How do we ensure that these figures remain allies and don't revert back to their old, destructive patterns? How can we create lasting change in our relationship with recurring nightmare figures, preventing them from slipping back into their old patterns, and ensuring that they remain sources of support, guidance, and inspiration on our ongoing journey of self-discovery? Remember, you now have the tools. It's one thing to identify the recurring figures that populate our nightmares, but it's quite another to recognize the equally significant recurring themes that weave through these nocturnal dramas. While the figures, the persecutors, the abandoners, the helpers grab our immediate attention, The underlying themes often reveal the persistent anxieties, unresolved conflicts, and deep-seated psychological patterns that truly shape our inner world. These themes act as a stage upon which the figures play out their roles, providing a crucial layer of understanding that goes beyond the individual actors themselves. To differentiate between figures and themes, it's helpful to think of figures as the characters in a play, while themes are the plotlines or scenarios in which those characters operate. You might have different actors playing the role of the persecutor in your dreams, but if the persecutor is consistently placing you in the exact same scenario, say, being trapped in a suffocating room, then it's the scenario itself, the theme of being trapped, that holds the key to understanding the nightmare's deeper message. Consider a recurring dream where you're being chased, sometimes by a monster, sometimes by a shadowy figure, sometimes by a group of unknown people. While the specific identity of the chaser might vary, the underlying theme remains constant: the feeling of being pursued, of being under threat, of being unable to escape. The theme is the constant, and the figure is a variable. How then can we identify and analyze these recurring themes in our nightmares? And how do these themes provide a different layer of understanding beyond the individual figures that populate our dreamscapes? One of the most common recurring themes in nightmares is that of powerlessness and helplessness. This theme manifests as a recurring nightmare scenario where the dreamer feels unable to control their environment, protect themselves, or influence the outcome of events. These types of nightmares evoke a profound sense of being trapped, overwhelmed, and at the mercy of external forces, leaving the dreamer feeling vulnerable and exposed. Think of the classic nightmare of being paralyzed, unable to move or speak while a menacing figure approaches, or the dream of being trapped in a confined space, a claustrophobic room or a sinking car with no means of escape, or the scenario of facing an unstoppable force, a tidal wave or a raging fire, against which all efforts are futile. The feeling of being paralyzed, for instance, might relate to the body's natural paralysis during REM sleep, but the psychological significance of this experience in the context of the nightmare goes far beyond mere physiology. It speaks to a deeper sense of lacking agency, of being unable to assert oneself or affect change in one's life. A person who feels powerless in their job, constantly subjected to the whims of a demanding boss, might dream of being trapped in a maze with no exit, symbolizing their lack of control over their professional destiny. Reintroducing the recurring nightmare figures, we might find that the recurring persecutor is consistently putting the dreamer in situations that evoke this sense of powerlessness and helplessness. The persecutor is not just present, but actively orchestrating a scenario designed to strip the dreamer of their agency, highlighting the underlying theme of lacking control. Another prevalent recurring theme is that of threat and danger, a nightmare scenario where the dreamer feels imminently threatened, either physically or emotionally, triggering intense feelings of fear, anxiety, and vulnerability. These nightmares evoke a sense of being unsafe, exposed, and at constant risk of harm, creating a state of heightened alert and apprehension. Common manifestations of this theme include being chased, attacked, or hunted by a predator, witnessing acts of violence either directed at oneself or others, or facing a natural disaster or apocalyptic scenario, such as an earthquake, a tornado, or a nuclear explosion. The feeling of being chased, for example, can be related to the body's fight-or-flight response, a primal instinct that kicks in when we perceive a threat. But in the context of a nightmare, this response takes on a deeper psychological significance, often reflecting unresolved trauma, feelings of insecurity, or a fear of judgment. A person who experienced childhood bullying, for instance, might dream of being chased by a group of menacing figures, symbolizing their persistent fear of social rejection and humiliation. Even the recurring abandoner is connected to the theme of threat and danger. The abandoner is not just leaving, they are abandoning the dreamer to the threat. They are putting the dreamer in these situations. The theme of loss and abandonment also appears frequently, a recurring nightmare scenario where the dreamer experiences the loss of a loved one, a valued possession, or a fundamental sense of belonging, triggering feelings of profound grief, sadness, and loneliness. These types of nightmares evoke a sense of emptiness, isolation, and disconnection, leaving the dreamer feeling adrift and without support. This theme can manifest in various ways: the death of a loved one, often sudden and unexpected, being left behind or forgotten by family or friends, losing a valuable object, such as a cherished photograph or a precious heirloom, or experiencing a sudden and unexpected separation from a person, place, or community that provides a sense of security and identity. A person whose partner recently ended a relationship, for instance, might dream of losing their wedding ring, symbolizing the loss of their commitment and the end of their shared future. Or consider the individual who experienced childhood neglect and who subsequently dreams of being lost in a crowd with no one noticing them, reflecting their deep-seated fear of being invisible and unloved. Even the recurring helper can be present in this nightmare, but it's the helper failing to save someone from loss. The helper appears, but is rendered helpless in the face of loss. It's crucial to remember that these recurring nightmare themes often intertwine and overlap, creating complex and multifaceted narratives that reflect the intricate nature of the unconscious mind. A nightmare of being chased through a burning building, for instance, could combine the themes of threat and danger, powerlessness and helplessness, and loss and abandonment, reflecting a fear of losing control in a dangerous situation, of being unable to escape a perceived threat, and of being abandoned in a crisis. Understanding these theme combinations can provide a deeper and more nuanced understanding of the dreamer's underlying psychological state, revealing the interconnectedness of their fears, anxieties, and unresolved conflicts. By recognizing the specific ways in which these themes manifest and interact in our nightmares, we can begin to unlock their hidden meanings and gain valuable insights into our inner world. Now that we have identified some of the most common recurring themes in nightmares, how can we actively engage with these themes to unlock their hidden meanings and transform them from sources of fear into catalysts for growth and healing? How can we use dream journaling, active imagination, and shadow work to explore the deeper meaning of recurring nightmare themes and integrate their messages into our waking lives? Identifying recurring nightmare themes is a crucial first step, but simply knowing that you consistently dream of powerlessness or threat and danger is not enough to unlock the full transformative potential of these nocturnal experiences. It's akin to knowing the rules of a complex board game without ever actually playing it. You might understand the mechanics, but you'll never truly grasp the strategic depth and the emotional investment until you actively participate. How, then, can we move beyond mere intellectual understanding and truly engage with these recurring nightmare themes in a way that promotes healing, growth, and lasting change? This is where the concept of theme activation comes into play. Theme activation involves consciously revisiting and exploring the emotional and psychological landscape of the recurring nightmare theme, intentionally immersing oneself in the feelings, sensations, and associations connected to that specific scenario. Think of it as re-entering the scene of the crime in a detective investigation, meticulously examining the details, gathering clues, and retracing the steps of the perpetrator. Or consider a therapist guiding a patient to revisit a traumatic memory, not to re-traumatize them, but to help them process the experience in a safe and controlled environment, ultimately fostering healing and resolution. Similarly, theme activation encourages a deliberate return to the emotional territory of the nightmare, but with the intention of gaining a deeper understanding of the underlying issues and discovering new, more adaptive ways to respond. It's crucial to emphasize that theme activation is not about recklessly plunging oneself back into the depths of fear and anxiety. This process should always be approached with caution, self-compassion, and a willingness to seek support if needed. It's not about re-traumatizing oneself, but about carefully and deliberately exploring the emotional terrain of the nightmare in order to gain new insights and develop more effective coping mechanisms. It's about transforming the nightmare from a source of terror into a valuable tool for self-discovery. But how do we begin this process of theme activation? How do we consciously re-enter the landscape of our recurring nightmares and engage with the underlying themes in a meaningful and transformative way? One of the most effective ways to immerse oneself in the thematic landscape of a recurring nightmare is through dream journaling. However, this isn't simply about recording the events of the dream, but about actively seeking to capture the emotional and sensory details associated with the recurring theme. Instead of focusing solely on what happened in the dream, focus on how you felt, what you sensed, and what the overall atmosphere of the dream was like. If your recurring theme is being trapped, don't just write about the physical space you were confined in. Describe the feeling of claustrophobia, the sensation of the walls closing in, the smell of stale air, the sounds of your own panicked breathing. To further immerse yourself in the thematic landscape, try writing from the perspective of different characters or objects within the dream. If your recurring theme is being trapped, write from the perspective of the walls that are closing in on you. What are their motivations? What do they feel as they restrict your movement? Or write from the perspective of the object that is trapping you, a locked door, a heavy chain, an invisible force field. What is its purpose? What does it feel like to be an instrument of confinement? By shifting your perspective in this way, you can gain new insights into the underlying dynamics of the nightmare theme and uncover hidden aspects of your own psyche. Do you notice that the theme of being trapped tends to surface when you are feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or controlled by others in your waking life? Are there specific situations, people, or events that tend to trigger this feeling? By making these connections, you can begin to understand the ways in which your nightmares are reflecting and commenting on your waking life experiences. What unmet needs or unresolved conflicts might be driving your recurring nightmare theme of being trapped? Are you feeling restricted in your career, your relationships, or your creative expression? Are you longing for greater freedom, autonomy, or self-expression? By exploring these questions in your dream journal, you can begin to uncover the deeper meaning behind the theme's presence in your nightmares. Active imagination takes this immersion a step further, serving as a powerful tool for engaging directly with the forces underlying recurring nightmare themes, rather than just the figures or events within the dream. This is a crucial distinction. While dream journaling allows you to explore the landscape of the nightmare, active imagination allows you to confront the very forces that shape that landscape. Think of it this way. In a nightmare about being chased, dream journaling might help you understand the identity and motivations of the pursuer, while active imagination allows you to confront the very act of pursuit itself. You aren't engaging the pursuer, you're engaging the pursuit as an abstract, archetypal force. This can lead to unexpected insights and transformative changes in your relationship with the recurring nightmare theme. But how do we initiate and maintain a meaningful dialogue with these thematic forces? To begin, create a safe and comfortable space where you can relax and focus without interruption. Ground yourself in the present moment by taking a few deep breaths and consciously connecting with your physical sensations. Then, invite the thematic force to manifest in your imagination. Close your eyes and picture the essence of the theme, the pursuit, powerlessness, loss, and abandonment taking on a form, a presence, a voice. Acknowledge its presence and express your willingness to engage in a dialogue. I acknowledge your presence, the pursuit. What are you trying to teach me? What do you want me to understand? Then, listen carefully to the response that arises in your mind. Resist the urge to control the theme or force it to conform to your expectations. Instead, allow it to express its own perspectives and motivations, even if they are challenging or uncomfortable. The point is to engage in dialogue, and not monologue. Consider the case of a person who used active imagination to dialogue with the theme of powerlessness. Initially, they experienced intense frustration and resentment towards this force, viewing it as a source of weakness and vulnerability. However, as they continued to engage with it in active imagination, they discovered that powerlessness was actually a protective mechanism designed to shield them from taking on too much responsibility and becoming overwhelmed by the demands of others. By acknowledging and integrating their own limitations, they were able to transform the theme from a source of anxiety into a source of self-compassion. They learned to say no to unreasonable requests, to prioritize their own needs, and to embrace their vulnerability as a source of strength. The shocking truth was that powerlessness was not their enemy, but an ally in disguise, protecting them from burnout and exhaustion. But the relationship between recurring nightmare themes and personal growth doesn't end there. These themes often act as a projection screen, reflecting disowned aspects of the dreamer's own personality or unresolved conflicts from their past. The powerlessness you feel is often the power you deny yourself. The anger you witness is often the anger you suppress. This connection between nightmares and shadow work provides another avenue for engaging with these troubling dreamscapes. How can we use recurring nightmare themes as a projection screen, revealing the qualities, emotions, and behaviors we find most unacceptable or threatening in ourselves? To begin, ask yourself what aspects of the nightmare theme you find most disturbing or repulsive. What qualities does it embody that you judge harshly in others? What emotions does it evoke that you try to suppress in yourself? If your recurring theme is the pursuit, for example, ask yourself what aspects of the pursuit you suppress or deny in yourself. Do you resist setting goals or dismiss them as pointless? Do you find yourself judging those who are ambitious and driven, accusing them of being ruthless or insensitive? These judgments can provide valuable clues about the qualities you are disowning in yourself. A powerful technique for engaging in shadow work with recurring nightmare themes is to write a letter from the perspective of the theme, explaining its motivations and justifying its actions. What is it trying to achieve? What is it trying to protect you from? What unmet needs is it seeking to fulfill? It's essential to remember that embracing one's shadow is a lifelong journey, not a destination. There will be times when you feel overwhelmed by the darkness, when you struggle to accept the less desirable aspects of your personality. But with self-compassion and persistence, you can gradually integrate these disowned qualities and transform them into sources of strength and resilience. By embracing powerlessness, you can learn to set healthy boundaries and prioritize your own needs. By understanding threat and danger, you can develop greater self-confidence and resilience. By acknowledging loss and abandonment, you can heal past wounds and cultivate deeper connections with others. In essence, working with recurring nightmare themes involves a multifaceted approach that combines theme activation, dream journaling, active imagination, and shadow work. By consciously engaging with these themes, we can unlock their hidden meanings and transform them from sources of fear into catalysts for growth, healing, and self-discovery. By embracing threat and danger, you can learn to set healthy boundaries and prioritize your own needs. By understanding the pursuit, you can develop greater self-confidence and resilience. By acknowledging powerlessness, you can heal past wounds and cultivate deeper connections with others. However, working with recurring nightmare themes is a powerful starting point, but it's essential to develop long-term strategies for maintaining this progress and preventing these themes from resurfacing in your dreams and your waking life. How can we create lasting change in our relationship with recurring nightmare themes, preventing them from regaining their power and ensuring that they remain catalysts for growth, healing, and self-discovery? The insights gleaned from deciphering a particularly vivid or recurring nightmare can feel like a monumental breakthrough, a triumphant ascent to a higher plane of self-awareness, perhaps even a feeling of total cure. But is this feeling justified? Is untangling the symbolic knots of our deepest fears truly a one-time achievement, a finish line crossed, or is something more required? While the initial exhilaration of understanding a nightmare's message is undeniably powerful, it's crucial to resist the temptation to declare the case closed, for such a declaration risks prematurely halting the vital process of integration. Relate this to physical training. One doesn't simply go to the gym once and expect to remain in peak condition forever. Consistent effort, adaptation, and a long-term commitment to the process are essential. Similarly, integrating the insights gleaned from our nightmares is not a singular event, but an ongoing practice, a continuous tending to the inner garden of the soul. Think of it like learning to play a musical instrument. The initial excitement of mastering a simple melody quickly gives way to the realization that true proficiency requires years of dedicated practice, constant refinement, and a willingness to embrace new challenges. In essence, understanding a nightmare is only the first step. The real work lies in consistently applying that understanding to our waking lives and adapting to the ever-shifting landscape of the unconscious. But how can we transform this initial breakthrough into a sustainable, long-term practice that fosters continued growth and prevents the resurgence of old patterns? The answer lies in the concept of maintenance, a sustained commitment to the practices and strategies that initially unlocked the nightmare's secrets. This means consistently engaging in dream journaling, revisiting active imagination exercises, and remaining vigilant for the subtle ways in which the nightmare's themes manifest in our daily lives. The unconscious is not a static entity. It is a dynamic, ever-changing realm, constantly generating new symbols, images, and narratives to reflect our evolving experiences. What this means is that even after seemingly resolving a particular issue, new challenges and conflicts will inevitably arise, prompting the unconscious to generate new dreams and potentially new nightmares. This is not a sign of failure, but rather an indication that the process of self-discovery is ongoing, a lifelong journey of exploration and integration. It's like maintaining a garden. You can't just plant the seeds and walk away. You need to water, weed, fertilize, and prune regularly to ensure that the plants continue to thrive. Similarly, we must continuously tend to our inner landscape, nurturing the insights we've gained and adapting to the changing seasons of our lives. But how can we effectively weave these maintenance practices into the fabric of our daily routines, ensuring that they become sustainable habits rather than fleeting resolutions? Establishing a consistent dream work routine is paramount, transforming what might feel like an occasional task into a regular and integral part of one's life. Dream journaling and active imagination, when practiced regularly, become powerful tools for navigating the ever-changing currents of the unconscious. This doesn't necessarily require hours of intense analysis each day. Even dedicating just 15-30 minutes to dream work can yield significant benefits over time. Treat it as a non-negotiable appointment with oneself, a sacred space carved out from the demands of the external world. Set realistic goals, such as journaling every morning or engaging in active imagination once a week. Find a comfortable and private space where you can relax and focus without interruption. Experiment with different techniques to discover what resonates most deeply with you, perhaps drawing, painting, movement, or even simply meditating on a particular image or symbol from your dream. Don't be afraid to be patient with yourself. There will be times when your dream work feels stagnant or unproductive, when the unconscious seems stubbornly silent. This is a normal part of the process. Allow yourself to rest, to step back, and to trust that the insights will eventually emerge in their own time. However, life, as it is wont to do, will inevitably throw curveballs, disrupting routines and creating unforeseen challenges. How can we maintain our dream work practice amidst the chaos and unpredictability of daily life? The key lies in flexibility, in adapting the dream work routine to accommodate changing circumstances rather than rigidly adhering to a fixed schedule. If you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed, it's perfectly acceptable to take a break from dream work. The important thing is to acknowledge the need for self-care and to return to the practice when you're feeling more grounded and resourced. Similarly, if your life circumstances change, a new job, a move, a relationship shift, be prepared to adjust your routine accordingly. Perhaps you need to find a new space for dream work, experiment with different techniques, or simply carve out a different time of day. If your recurring nightmare involves a figure of authority, and you suddenly find yourself in a position of authority at work, how does that shift your routine? Does it impact the way you are able to perform your dream work? The goal is to create a sustainable practice that can adapt to the ebb and flow of life, rather than a rigid structure that crumbles under pressure. But beyond the dedicated practice of dream work, what other lifestyle adjustments can we make to foster inner harmony and reduce the intensity and frequency of nightmares? Lifestyle choices exert a profound influence on our dream experiences, and consciously cultivating habits that support inner harmony can significantly reduce the frequency and intensity of nightmares. Establishing a regular sleep schedule is crucial, as irregular sleep patterns can disrupt the natural sleep cycles and increase the likelihood of disturbing dreams. Create a relaxing bedtime routine that signals to your body and mind that it's time to rest, perhaps reading a book, listening to soothing music, or taking a warm bath. Avoid caffeine and alcohol before bed, as these substances can interfere with sleep quality and trigger nightmares. Practice mindfulness or meditation to calm the mind and reduce stress. If one is lacking sleep or having poor diet, then nightmares are sure to persist. But it's not just about avoiding negative influences. It's also about actively cultivating positive ones. Engaging in activities that bring joy, meaning, and connection can nourish the soul and create a sense of inner peace that extends into our dream lives. The nightmares themselves are a reflection of the soul. They can also act as the cause of future ones. But how do we address these lifestyle adjustments when, for many, life is already overfull? Addressing underlying mental health issues, such as anxiety, depression, or trauma, is also essential for long-term nightmare integration. If you're struggling with persistent anxiety or depression, seeking professional help can provide you with tools and strategies for managing these issues and reducing their impact on your dreams. Therapy, medication, and other appropriate interventions can help to address the root causes of these conditions and create a greater sense of inner stability. Trauma, in particular, can manifest in recurring nightmares that replay the traumatic event or symbolize its emotional impact. Working with a therapist who specializes in trauma can help you to process these experiences in a safe and supportive environment, reducing the intensity of the nightmares and fostering healing. Connecting these waking lifestyle events with one's nightmares makes the integration seamless. However, the therapeutic relationship is just one type of relationship, and it is certainly not the only one that can have profound impacts on our dreams. What role do our everyday, non-professional relationships play in this journey of integration? Cultivating supportive relationships with people who understand and validate the importance of dream work can provide invaluable encouragement, insights, and a sense of community. Sharing your dreams with trusted friends, family members, or therapists can offer new perspectives and help you to process the emotions and experiences that arise during dream work. Consider joining a dream group or working with a therapist who specializes in dream analysis. These groups provide a safe and structured environment for exploring the unconscious, offering feedback, support, and a sense of shared understanding. In these relationships, it is critical to set healthy boundaries. Protecting oneself from those who are dismissive, judgmental, or invalidating is vital for maintaining a sense of safety and trust. Surround yourself with people who uplift and empower you, who celebrate your growth and support your journey of self-discovery. If recurring nightmare themes involve people, see if they line up with your own relationships. This reflection can be a source of integration. But what happens when, despite our best efforts, the nightmares persist or even evolve into new and unsettling forms? How do we navigate the inevitable setbacks and challenges that arise on the path of integration? Summarizing the key strategies for long-term nightmare integration, establishing a dream work routine, making lifestyle adjustments, and cultivating supportive relationships provides a solid foundation for continued growth. Regularly reassessing one's progress and adapting one's strategies as needed is crucial, recognizing that the journey of self-discovery is an ongoing process, not a destination. The unconscious is a fluid and dynamic realm, and our relationship with our nightmares will inevitably evolve over time. There will be times when your dream work feels stagnant or unproductive, when the insights seem elusive, or when new and unsettling nightmares emerge. Don't be discouraged. This is a normal part of the process. Simply reassess your strategies, make adjustments as needed, and trust that the unconscious will continue to guide you towards greater self-understanding. The path of integration is not always easy or comfortable, but it is always worth it. By embracing the challenges and persevering through the difficult times, we unlock our full potential for healing, growth, and transformation. Commit to establishing a dream work routine, making lifestyle adjustments, and cultivating supportive relationships. Embrace the power of your nightmares as catalysts for self-discovery and personal growth. For it is in the darkest depths of our fears that we often find the greatest treasures of our souls. Now that you have these tools for a long-term journey, how does the evolving landscape of the unconscious impact these ideas? It can feel as though you've finally reached the summit, that the most terrifying nightmares are behind you, that integration is complete. And then, the very next night, a familiar figure appears, a landscape returns, or a dread washes over you as you realize that the nightmares are back. After significant progress in understanding and integrating the messages of our nightmares, the return of these unwelcome nocturnal visitors can trigger feelings of discouragement, undermining our confidence in the entire process. Is all lost? Was the work done in vain? It is essential to resist the urge to view this nightmare relapse as a complete failure. Instead, consider it a temporary setback, a detour on the path of self-discovery. Just as individuals recovering from addiction may experience occasional relapses, or those managing chronic illnesses may face flare-ups, nightmare relapse is a common and often unavoidable part of the integration journey. Frame it not as a sign that the entire process has failed, but as a valuable signal that something within needs further attention, a deeper exploration of the unconscious landscape. Consider the case of a person who has made significant progress in managing their anxiety, only to experience a sudden panic attack during a stressful event. Or someone who has successfully managed a chronic pain condition for months, only to experience a sudden flare-up after a period of intense physical activity. Similarly, nightmare relapse is not a sign that all progress has been lost, but rather an indication that there are still unresolved issues or vulnerabilities that need to be addressed. What then are the common triggers for nightmare relapse, the hidden currents that can pull us back into the depths of our fears? Stress, trauma, changes in life circumstances, unresolved conflicts, and even neglect of dream work practices can all serve as potential triggers for nightmare relapse. The pressures of a demanding job, the complexities of an unhealthy relationship, or a lack of creative expression can all contribute to the resurgence of disturbing dreams. Sometimes, it's not a single event, but an accumulation of smaller stressors that gradually erode our inner resources, leaving us vulnerable to the reemergence of old patterns. A stressful job that demands long hours and constant pressure can leave you feeling depleted and overwhelmed, making it difficult to maintain healthy boundaries or engage in self-care practices. An unhealthy relationship characterized by conflict, criticism, or emotional neglect can create a sense of insecurity and instability, triggering deep-seated fears and anxieties. A lack of creative expression, whether it's through art, music, writing, or any other form of self-expression, can lead to a buildup of pent-up emotions and unmet needs, which may then manifest in nightmares. Examine the daily events to look for clues. If you typically do dream work at night, and you've had a relapse, were you watching something especially violent, or did you skip exercising because of fatigue? How can we understand these underlying causes, preventing relapse from derailing our progress and transforming it into an opportunity for deeper self-understanding and growth? Rather than succumbing to shame or discouragement, it's essential to promptly investigate the potential causes of a nightmare relapse, approaching it as a puzzle to be solved, a mystery to be unraveled. Become a detective in your own inner world, searching for clues and connections to understand what triggered the resurgence of disturbing dreams. Use dream journaling and active imagination to explore the emotional and psychological context surrounding the relapse, paying close attention to recent events, stressors, and emotional patterns. Carl Jung writes of the necessity to submit to the data of the unconscious in order to understand its messages. In practice, this looks like reviewing recent journal entries, meditating on recurring images, and exploring the emotions surrounding the dreams. Look for patterns or themes that may be emerging, paying attention to any recurring figures, symbols, or landscapes. The value of seeking feedback from trusted friends, therapists, or dream group members cannot be overstated, as external perspectives can often illuminate potential triggers and underlying issues that we may be blind to ourselves. Sometimes, others can see patterns in our behavior that we are unable to recognize, providing valuable insights that can help us to understand the root causes of our nightmares. For example, a friend may notice that you've been withdrawing from social activities or that you've been neglecting your self-care practices. A therapist may identify underlying trauma or unresolved conflicts that are contributing to your nightmares. Joining a dream group or sharing your dreams with others can provide a safe and supportive environment for exploring the unconscious, offering feedback, encouragement, and a sense of shared understanding. But does this all mean simply listening to others? It is important to connect any investigation to recurring figures and themes that come up. Has the recurring figure changed in any way? Has the theme undergone a transformation, however subtle? What does this imply about the underlying message of the nightmare? Following a nightmare relapse, it's crucial to review and revitalize one's integration strategies, renewing one's commitment to the ongoing process of self-discovery and growth. Relapse is not a reason to abandon the path of integration, but rather a reminder that we need to re-engage with our practices, adapt our strategies, and deepen our understanding of the unconscious. This may involve revisiting techniques that have been helpful in the past, such as dream journaling, active imagination, or shadow work, or it may require exploring new approaches that address the specific triggers and underlying issues identified during the relapse investigation. As Marie-Louise von France writes, the dream is a part of nature which harbors no intention to deceive, but expresses something as best it can. In other words, even a relapsed dream is not some kind of sabotage, but rather a natural expression of an inner state. This revitalization might mean modifying existing integration strategies to address specific triggers. Perhaps you need to adjust your shadow work practices to focus on a newly emerging aspect of your personality, or you need to strengthen your boundaries in a relationship that is triggering your nightmares. Or perhaps you need to incorporate new techniques, such as mindfulness, meditation, creative expression, or body-centered practices to address the underlying causes of the relapse. Mindfulness practices can help you to manage stress, reduce anxiety, and cultivate a greater sense of presence and awareness in your daily life. Meditation can calm the mind, reduce racing thoughts, and foster a deeper connection with your inner self. Creative expression can provide an outlet for pent-up emotions and unmet needs, allowing you to process your experiences in a safe and healthy way. Body-centered practices, such as yoga, Tai Chi, or dance can help you to release physical tension, reconnect with your body, and cultivate a greater sense of grounding and stability. The most important thing is to experiment with different techniques and find what resonates most deeply with you. How do all these points, ultimately, connect back to the recurring figures and themes, allowing the dreamer to truly integrate them into daily life? Self-compassion and acceptance are crucial in the face of nightmare relapse, recognizing that setbacks are a normal part of the human experience and that perfection is an unrealistic and ultimately unattainable goal. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a friend who is struggling, recognizing that you are doing the best you can in a difficult situation. Reframing relapse as an opportunity for learning and growth, rather than a sign of failure, allows us to gain valuable insights into our underlying vulnerabilities and unmet needs. Relapse is a chance to deepen your understanding of yourself, to identify your weaknesses, and to develop new strategies for coping with challenges. Instead of dwelling on perceived failures, focus on small victories and acknowledge the progress that has been made, celebrating strengths, resilience, and commitment to growth. Reinforce a connection with the core tools presented thus far. Is the dreamer consistently working with active imagination? Is dream journaling a regular practice? Are other healthy lifestyle choices in place? For it is in connecting with these tools that you will, in time, be able to develop a proactive approach to nightmare integration, creating a long-term plan for maintaining progress, preventing relapse, and continuing to grow and evolve. The long-term integration plan should include regular dream work practices, stress management techniques, healthy lifestyle choices, and supportive relationships. View nightmare integration as a lifelong journey, embracing the challenges and celebrating the victories along the way, knowing that the path to wholeness is paved with both light and shadow. There will be times when you feel discouraged, overwhelmed, or tempted to give up. But remember why you started this journey in the first place: to heal, to grow, and to become the best version of yourself. How, then, can the knowledge of relapse ultimately change the dreamer's overall approach to nightmares, allowing these to become the seeds for an improved life? What tools will be employed? The immediate aftermath of a nightmare relapse can feel like a crushing defeat, as though all the hard-won progress has vanished overnight. The familiar dread returns, the disturbing imagery floods the mind, and the initial reaction is often one of profound frustration. Not again. I thought I was done with this. Yet, it's crucial to recognize that this initial feeling of discouragement is a common, albeit unhelpful, response. Instead of succumbing to this negative spiral, what if we could reframe this experience, viewing it not as a failure, but as an invaluable opportunity for deeper exploration and more refined strategies? Enter the concept of strategic reappraisal, a cognitive technique used to shift one's emotional response to a stressful situation by reinterpreting its meaning. Instead of thinking, "Here we go again, all my work has been for nothing," the internal dialogue shifts to, "Okay, something new is trying to surface. This nightmare relapse is a signal, a call to investigate deeper layers of my unconscious." The relapse, then, becomes a chance to test the effectiveness of current strategies, to identify blind spots in our understanding, and to fine-tune our approach to nightmare integration. Consider it an advanced diagnostic tool, revealing areas where our defenses are weakest or where unresolved issues continue to exert their influence. It's a chance to apply existing tools in a new, insightful way. Rather than simply trying to suppress the nightmare, the empowered individual actively seeks to understand why it has returned, approaching the situation with curiosity, openness, and a willingness to learn. How can we transform our approach to nightmare relapse from one of damage control to one of empowered exploration, leveraging it as a catalyst for deeper self-understanding, refined integration strategies, and accelerated personal growth? Dream journaling, that cornerstone of nightmare integration, takes on even greater significance in the face of relapse. But this is not simply a matter of recording the dream's content. It requires a far deeper analysis of subtle shifts and nuances. Engage in the process of identifying subtle indicators of underlying psychological shifts by meticulously documenting changes in the dreamer's emotional response, alterations in recurring nightmare figures, or the emergence of new themes or symbols. Has the persecutor figure become more sympathetic or vulnerable? Has the theme of powerlessness shifted to a theme of resilience, even a subtle shift? These minute alterations can provide valuable clues to your evolving inner landscape. Are there new colors present in the dream? Is the weather different than before? Consider, for instance, a recurring nightmare of being chased through a dark forest. In the initial stages of integration, the dreamer might focus on identifying the chaser figure as representing a repressed fear of authority. However, in a relapse, the dreamer might notice that the forest is no longer completely dark. Perhaps there are patches of moonlight filtering through the trees. Or perhaps the chaser figure is no longer running, but limping. These subtle shifts can indicate that the dreamer is making progress in confronting their fear, but that there are still unresolved aspects that need to be addressed. Also, what has changed in waking life? It could be useful to examine recent events, stressors, and emotional patterns in waking life, using the dream journal to identify potential triggers for the relapse. Are you experiencing new stressors, challenges, or relationship dynamics? Are you neglecting your self-care practices? By connecting the dots between the dream world and the waking world, one can gain invaluable insights into the underlying causes of the relapse, informing a more targeted and effective integration strategy. This, in turn, opens the door for deeper exploration and integration, especially in the realm of active imagination and shadow work. Active imagination, like dream journaling, must adapt to the evolving narrative of recurring nightmare figures and themes. A rigid approach, clinging to initial interpretations, will likely prove ineffective. The demon you confronted before might now be seeking help. The monster might now be protecting you from something. The nightmare landscape itself may now be trying to convey something entirely new. Use active imagination to explore the changing relationship dynamics with recurring nightmare figures, understanding their evolving needs, fears, and motivations. The persecutor figure may reveal a hidden capacity for compassion, or the abandoner figure may offer unexpected words of wisdom. It is crucial to let go of preconceived notions and approach each encounter with a sense of openness and curiosity. Consider the case of a woman who had been plagued by recurring nightmares of a menacing wolf figure. Initially, she interpreted the wolf as representing her own repressed anger and aggression. Through active imagination, she confronted the wolf, expressing her anger and setting boundaries. This led to a period of relative peace. However, the nightmares eventually returned, with the wolf figure now appearing as a wounded animal, whimpering in pain. Instead of resorting to old strategies, the woman adapted her approach, engaging the wolf in a new dialogue. She asked it what had changed, what it was trying to communicate now. The wolf revealed that it was not trying to harm her, but rather to protect her from a dangerous situation in her waking life. By shifting her perspective from confrontation to compassion, the woman was able to uncover a hidden resource within the nightmare figure, transforming it from a source of fear to a source of support and guidance. From this point on, the wolf appeared as her guardian, warning her of possible dangers that her conscious mind was unwilling to accept. The empowered response to nightmare relapse also calls for a more nuanced and sophisticated approach to shadow work. Integration is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of self-discovery and refinement. Think of it as peeling back another layer of the onion, revealing deeper and more complex aspects of the shadow self. This means going beyond the initial identification of negative traits and exploring the underlying vulnerabilities, unmet needs, and repressed emotions that may be contributing to the recurring nightmares. Explore your relationship with your parents, siblings, or other significant figures from your past. What unmet needs or unresolved conflicts might be contributing to your shadow issues? Perhaps the nightmares are related to a deep-seated fear of abandonment, stemming from a childhood experience of parental neglect. Or perhaps they are connected to a repressed desire for recognition and validation, stemming from a history of being overlooked or criticized. Whatever the underlying causes, it's essential to approach them with self-compassion and acceptance, recognizing that the shadow is not something to be eradicated, but rather something to be understood and integrated. Nightmare relapse, then, becomes an opportunity to delve into previously unacknowledged aspects of the shadow, to bring them into the light of consciousness, and to embrace them as valuable parts of the self. It's important to treat yourself with kindness, but also to be honest with yourself. Are you continuing with the practice? In essence, an empowered response to nightmare relapse involves a strategic reappraisal of the situation, transforming it from a setback into an opportunity. This requires an advanced approach to dream journaling, adapting active imagination techniques, and engaging in deeper shadow work. By embracing relapse as a catalyst for growth, we shift from a reactive, problem-focused approach to a proactive, curiosity-driven exploration of the unconscious. By embracing relapse, you are not only preventing future nightmares, but also cultivating greater self-awareness, resilience, and emotional intelligence. But we're just scratching the surface. The ultimate goal is not to eliminate nightmares entirely, but rather to develop a psyche that is resilient and adaptable enough to handle whatever challenges the unconscious may throw our way. How can we cultivate a nightmare-resilient psyche, developing the inner resources and strategies we need to navigate future challenges with grace, resilience, and unwavering commitment to our own growth and well-being? The knowledge and the tools are present, so now what? Even with effective strategies for managing and integrating nightmares, should the ultimate goal be to eliminate them entirely? Perhaps the truest form of mastery lies not in banishing nightmares, but in cultivating a resilient psyche that can learn and grow from any dream experience, even the most terrifying. A life without nightmares isn't necessarily the goal, but rather a life where nightmares are viewed as potent, albeit unsettling, sources of valuable data, offering profound insights into the hidden corners of our inner world. What, then, does this nightmare-resilient psyche look like, and how do we cultivate it? The nightmare-resilient psyche can be understood as a state of psychological well-being characterized by a constellation of traits: openness to experience, emotional flexibility, and a robust sense of self-efficacy. It's calmness amidst the storm, a centeredness that allows one to observe the chaos without being consumed by it, and a self-assurance that stems from a deep knowing of one's own inner resources. But let's be clear, this is not about achieving a state of perpetual fearlessness. It's not about becoming immune to the terror of nightmares. Instead, it's about developing the capacity to face them with curiosity, courage, and perhaps most importantly, self-compassion. Like a muscle that grows stronger with resistance, the nightmare-resilient psyche emerges from the crucible of challenging dream experiences, bouncing back stronger, wiser, and more integrated than before. But how can we cultivate this nightmare-resilient psyche, transforming our relationship with nightmares from one of fear and avoidance to one of curiosity, growth, and unwavering self-acceptance? At the heart of the nightmare-resilient psyche lies a profound openness to experience, a willingness to embrace the unpredictable currents of the unconscious mind. This requires surrendering the illusion of control, challenging deeply held assumptions, and venturing into unfamiliar emotional landscapes. Jung, in his exploration of the unconscious, emphasized the importance of active imagination, a process of consciously engaging with dream imagery and allowing the unconscious to express itself freely without censorship or judgment. This active engagement cultivates an attitude of openness, welcoming the unexpected and challenging the tendency to filter experience through the lens of preconceived notions. What practical steps can we take to cultivate this openness in our daily lives? One path involves actively seeking experiences that challenge our comfort zone, whether it's trying a new cuisine, exploring a different culture, or engaging in a creative pursuit that stretches our abilities. Practicing mindfulness, paying attention to the present moment without judgment, can also help to cultivate openness by allowing us to observe our thoughts and emotions with greater detachment. Critically, this openness extends to embracing the unpredictable nature of the unconscious, recognizing that nightmares can often present us with unexpected insights, challenging perspectives, and uncomfortable truths. Be prepared, as Jung might say, to have your assumptions challenged and your beliefs questioned. The unconscious is not always polite or predictable. It speaks in symbols, metaphors, and often terrifying imagery. What are those recurring themes, and what are those recurring figures demanding from you? Are they challenging a specific preconception, or are they revealing a path you've been too afraid to tread? By remaining open to these possibilities, we transform nightmares from unwelcome intrusions into valuable messengers, guiding us toward greater self-understanding. But openness alone is not enough. We must also cultivate emotional flexibility to navigate the intense emotional currents unleashed by nightmares. Emotional flexibility is the second cornerstone of the nightmare-resilient psyche, enabling us to navigate the intense emotions triggered by nightmares without becoming overwhelmed or shutting down. Emotional flexibility doesn't mean suppressing or denying difficult emotions, but rather developing the capacity to experience them fully without judgment or attachment. It's about learning to surf the waves of emotion rather than being swept away by them. What practical strategies can we employ to cultivate this vital capacity? One approach involves practicing emotional regulation techniques, such as deep breathing exercises or progressive muscle relaxation, which can help to calm the nervous system and reduce the intensity of emotional reactions. Developing self-soothing strategies, such as spending time in nature, listening to music, or engaging in creative activities, can also provide a much-needed sense of comfort and stability during times of emotional distress. Create a self-soothing toolkit of activities and resources that you can turn to when you're feeling overwhelmed. Crucially, cultivating emotional flexibility also requires recognizing and accepting the full range of human emotions, including fear, anger, sadness, and joy, understanding that each emotion serves a valuable purpose and provides valuable information. Don't try to suppress or eliminate your emotions, Jung might advise. Instead, try to understand them. What are they telling you? What needs are they signaling? This understanding allows us to respond to our emotions with greater awareness and compassion, rather than reacting impulsively or defensively. Consider those recurring nightmare themes. Perhaps the theme of being trapped triggers feelings of helplessness, or the theme of being attacked evokes feelings of anger and resentment. By developing emotional flexibility, we can learn to navigate these intense emotions without becoming paralyzed by fear or consumed by rage, allowing us to extract valuable insights from the nightmare experience. However, openness and emotional flexibility are only part of the equation. We also need to cultivate a strong sense of self-efficacy to truly master our inner world. Self-efficacy, the belief in one's ability to influence one's own inner world and effectively cope with the challenges that arise in nightmares, is the final key to unlocking the nightmare-resilient psyche. Self-efficacy is not about having complete control over nightmares, but rather about feeling empowered to respond to them in a constructive and adaptive way. It's about knowing that you have the resources and skills to navigate even the most terrifying dream landscapes. So, how do we cultivate this sense of inner power and agency? One powerful strategy involves setting realistic goals, breaking down complex tasks into smaller, manageable steps, and celebrating small victories along the way. Start by setting a small goal, such as recording one dream each week, and gradually increase the frequency as you become more comfortable. Another key element is challenging negative self-talk and limiting beliefs, replacing them with more positive and empowering affirmations. Instead of saying, "I'm never going to understand my nightmares," try saying, "I am capable of learning and growing from my dreams." As we confront those recurring figures and engage with those recurring themes, we begin to see them not as insurmountable threats, but rather as opportunities to exercise our inner power and develop our capacity for self-mastery. When the nightmare shifts from a terrifying ordeal into an opportunity, then resilience has taken root. In essence, openness, emotional flexibility, and self-efficacy are the interconnected pillars that support the nightmare-resilient psyche. Each element reinforces the others, creating a virtuous cycle of growth and empowerment. However, cultivating a nightmare-resilient psyche is not a destination, but an ongoing journey, requiring sustained effort, self-reflection, and a willingness to embrace the challenges and uncertainties that inevitably arise along the way. The path to a nightmare-resilient psyche is not always easy or comfortable, but it is always worth it, for it leads to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the hidden potential that lies within. But what if we could go even further, transforming the very nature of our nightmares, turning them from sources of fear and anxiety into catalysts for profound transformation? Enter the concept of nightmare alchemy, a process of transforming the lead of fear and anxiety into the gold of self-understanding, resilience, and empowerment. By embracing our nightmares, engaging with them consciously, and extracting their hidden wisdom, we initiate a process of psychological transformation, transmuting the darkness into light. And here's something they don't want you to know. By embracing your nightmares, you are not only healing yourself, but also contributing to the collective unconscious, helping to transform the world one dream at a time. The unconscious, in Jungian terms, is a shared space. When we integrate disturbing elements, we reduce the darkness for everyone. What is the next step on your journey of self-discovery? Commit to cultivating openness, emotional flexibility, and self-efficacy. Embrace the power of your nightmares as catalysts for growth, healing, and unwavering self-acceptance. You are worth it. But how exactly do we perform nightmare alchemy, transmuting the raw material of our deepest fears into the gold of self-realization and profound psychological integration? Nightmare alchemy, transmuting the raw material of our deepest fears into the gold of self-realization and profound psychological integration. But here's what most people miss. Nightmares aren't just random psychic detritus. They are the unconscious mind's attempt to communicate vital information, often cloaked in symbolic language and dramatic imagery. The question then becomes not how to banish these unwelcome guests, but how to decode their messages and harness their transformative power. Can we truly unlock the hidden potential within our nightmares, transforming them from sources of terror into springboards for creativity and self-discovery? Let's explore the notion of nightmares as creative fuel, challenging the pervasive perception of them as solely negative or pathological experiences. What if, instead, we viewed nightmares as unfiltered expressions of the unconscious mind, providing access to a wealth of imagery, emotion, and narrative potential that is often inaccessible in our waking consciousness? Think of it as the unconscious as muse. Just as a painter might find inspiration in a fleeting sunset or a writer in a chance encounter, we can find creative inspiration in the raw, untamed landscapes of our nightmares. Consider the surrealist movement in art, which sought to tap into the unconscious mind as a source of creative inspiration, embracing the bizarre, the illogical, and the dreamlike. Artists like Salvador Dali and René Magritte deliberately courted the irrational, seeking to bypass the constraints of conscious thought and unlock the hidden depths of the psyche. Similarly, nightmares can provide us with a direct line to the unconscious, offering a glimpse into the hidden forces that shape our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Many artists throughout history have drawn inspiration from their dreams. William Blake, the visionary English poet and painter, claimed that his poems and paintings were dictated to him by spiritual beings in his dreams. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was famously conceived in a nightmare. Are nightmares, then, merely mental breakdowns, or could they be the raw material for artistic expression? By shifting our perspective, we can begin to see nightmares not as enemies to be feared, but as valuable allies in our creative process. But how can we tap into this creative potential, transforming our nightmares from sources of fear and anxiety into springboards for artistic expression and self-discovery? This brings us to the question of transforming nightmares into compelling narratives, crafting stories from the unconscious. How can we extract the story elements contained within our dreams and develop them into something meaningful and engaging? Defined as a series of events, real or imagined, that tells a story, a narrative has a conflict, characters, setting, and an emotional tone. Consider your most recent nightmare. What was the core conflict? Was it a struggle against a menacing figure, a desperate attempt to escape a dangerous situation, or an internal battle against conflicting desires? Identify the main characters, even if they seem bizarre or unfamiliar. Who are the protagonists, the antagonists, and the supporting players in your dream drama? Now consider the setting. Where does the nightmare take place? Is it a familiar location transformed into something sinister, a fantastical landscape, or a symbolic representation of your inner world? Finally, what is the overall emotional tone of the nightmare? Is it filled with fear, anxiety, dread, or a strange mixture of emotions? Once you have identified these core elements, you can begin to develop the narrative beyond the initial dream experience. What happened before the nightmare began? What were the events that led up to this moment of terror? What happens after it ends? Does the dreamer wake up in a cold sweat, or does the nightmare continue to unfold, leading to further revelations or challenges? How do the characters evolve over the course of the story? Do they change their motivations, their relationships, or their roles in the narrative? What thematic depth can you add to the story? Does the nightmare explore themes of loss, betrayal, isolation, or the search for meaning? By answering these questions, you can transform a fragmented and chaotic dream experience into a coherent and compelling narrative. But what if you're stuck, struggling to develop the story beyond the initial dream imagery? Try freewriting, allowing your thoughts to flow freely onto the page without censorship or judgment. Try brainstorming, generating as many ideas as possible without worrying about whether they are good or bad. Try character interviewing, writing from the perspective of one of the characters in the dream. What are their thoughts, feelings, and motivations? Consider those recurring figures. What stories do they tell? Are the themes repeated from nightmare to nightmare, from dream to dream? The point is not to create a perfect, polished story, but rather to engage with the raw material of your unconscious and discover the hidden narratives that lie within. However, generating narratives is only the first step. What if those narratives could facilitate shadow work? Now, let's turn to the use of creative writing as a powerful tool for shadow work, exploring the dark side on the page. Shadow work, in Jungian psychology, is the process of exploring and integrating the disowned aspects of our personality, the parts of ourselves that we reject, suppress, or deny. These shadow aspects can manifest in nightmares as menacing figures, disturbing images, or unsettling emotions. What if, instead of running away from these shadow figures, we engaged with them consciously, exploring their motivations, their desires, and their hidden potential? Creative writing provides a safe and structured space for this kind of exploration, allowing us to experiment with different aspects of our personality without judgment or fear of consequences. Writing allows you to experiment with different aspects of your personality without judgment or fear of consequences, a sentiment echoed by many therapists. But what specific techniques can we use to engage with shadow figures in our nightmares? Consider writing from the perspective of the shadow figure. What are their thoughts, feelings, and motivations? What are they trying to protect you from? What are their deepest fears? What are their unmet needs? Create a dialogue between the dreamer and the shadow. What questions does the dreamer ask the shadow? What answers does the shadow provide? What is the shadow figure trying to tell you? Instead of simply reacting with fear or anger, try to understand the shadow's perspective, its motivations, and its hidden wisdom. To illustrate the power of creative writing for shadow work, consider the case of a person who had recurring nightmares of being chased by a monstrous figure. Initially, they interpreted the monster as a representation of their deepest fears and anxieties. However, after engaging in shadow work through creative writing, they discovered that the monster represented their own repressed anger, which they had been afraid to express. By giving the monster a voice, they were able to integrate their anger and become more assertive in their waking life, leading to a significant improvement in their relationships and overall well-being. In this case, writing allowed the dreamer to embrace previously rejected aspects of themselves and achieve greater psychological wholeness. How do these figures connect to the recurring themes in your nightmares? Do they always play the same role? Do they evolve over time? Remember, the goal is not to eliminate the shadow, but to integrate it into our conscious self, recognizing that it is an essential part of who we are. But how do all of these individual elements contribute to a wider alchemical transformation? In essence, we are discussing the alchemical transformation, from fear to empowerment. Nightmares are not simply random occurrences. They are opportunities for growth, healing, and self-discovery. Nightmares can serve as creative fuel, sparking artistic expression and providing access to the hidden depths of the unconscious. By transforming nightmares into compelling narratives, we can gain valuable insights into our inner world and develop our creative potential. And by engaging in shadow work through creative writing, we can integrate disowned aspects of our personality, leading to greater self-acceptance and psychological wholeness. By embracing your nightmares, you can transform them from sources of fear and anxiety into catalysts for growth, healing, and self-discovery. A process that leads to increased self-awareness, enhanced emotional resilience, greater creative expression, and a deeper sense of psychological wholeness. You are now equipped to alchemize your nightmares, transmuting the raw material of your deepest fears into the gold of self-realization and profound psychological integration. But we're just scratching the surface. The knowledge and techniques provide a toolkit of psychological benefits, but we must look at the broader life implications and the surprising ways nightmares can improve your life overall. But here's what most people overlook. Nightmares are not exclusively confined to the realm of psychological disturbances. They can also function as an early warning system, alerting us to potential threats to our overall well-being, extending beyond the purely psychological to the possibility of genuine physical peril. Can a nightmare not only reflect inner turmoil, but also serve as a preemptive alarm, signaling dangers that our conscious minds have yet to perceive? Consider nightmares as an evolutionary adaptation, a vestige of our primal instincts honed over millennia to safeguard us from harm. Is it possible that these nocturnal terrors represent a heightened state of awareness, a surge of adrenaline mirroring the fight or flight response, designed to awaken us to threats lurking in our environment or simmering within our own bodies? Beyond their symbolic significance, might our nightmares be directly warning us about impending dangers, acting as an internal sentinel for threats we haven't consciously recognized, a form of subconscious triage? This brings us to the question of decoding these signals. Can nightmares truly function as early detection systems, providing crucial insights into potential health problems, toxic relationships, or impending life crises that we might otherwise miss? Dreams of being trapped, for example, might extend beyond a feeling of being stuck in life, and instead reflect a toxic home or work environment from which there is literally no escape. Aches and pains in a dream, likewise, may be more than metaphor. If the mind is creating the sensation of pain when the body is otherwise at rest, this could potentially be the mind's first alert that something is going wrong inside the body. Consider the case of a woman who dreamt repeatedly of a dull, persistent chest pain, a discomfort she dismissed in her waking hours as mere stress. However, the recurring nightmare prompted her to seek medical attention, revealing an undiagnosed heart condition that required immediate intervention. Similarly, a man plagued by dreams of being suffocated in his sleep discovered, through dream analysis, that he was in an emotionally and psychologically abusive relationship, one from which he was able to extract himself. Or what of the account of a hypoid executive, whose nightmares of being unprepared for a crucial presentation led him to uncover a conspiracy within his company that would ultimately lead to its collapse if left unaddressed? But are these merely coincidences, or do our nightmares possess a deeper capacity for prescience, tapping into subtle cues and unconscious anxieties to alert us to impending danger? It is crucial, therefore, to pay close attention to recurring or particularly vivid nightmares, as these may serve as red flags, signaling more serious underlying issues that demand our immediate attention. The intensity of the nightmare, its emotional resonance, often reflects the urgency of the warning, a visceral cry from the depths of our unconscious demanding to be heard. But how do we discern the true message within the cacophony of fear and anxiety? Enter the concept of emotional resonance, a measure of how the intensity and emotional tone of a nightmare often mirror the severity of the underlying issue. A mild anxiety dream, characterized by vague unease, stands in stark contrast to a terrifying nightmare filled with a deep sense of dread, a primal fear that grips us in the dead of night. Recurring nightmares, particularly those that replay traumatic events or evoke deeply ingrained patterns of behavior, can point to unresolved trauma, deeply ingrained patterns of behavior, or significant life changes that require immediate and sustained attention. Nightmares about being chased, for instance, are frequently linked to individuals who are actively fleeing from difficult situations in their personal lives, avoiding confrontation or suppressing painful emotions. What is the intensity of the emotional tone of your nightmares? For example, consider an individual grappling with childhood trauma who experiences recurring nightmares of being abandoned by their parents. By analyzing the emotional content of these nightmares, the individual can begin to confront the underlying trauma, process the associated emotions, and develop healthier coping mechanisms, ultimately leading to greater emotional well-being and resilience. How can we begin to address the emotional roots of our nightmares? However, it is also important to exercise caution against interpreting nightmares as direct, literal warnings, emphasizing the critical need to consider the symbolic language of the unconscious. A dream about a house fire, for instance, may not be a premonition of an actual fire, but rather a symbolic representation of an inner emotional state, perhaps a burning rage or a need for emotional cleansing. Dream symbols, as we have discussed, are often multi-layered and open to interpretation, their meanings shaped by the individual's personal history, cultural background, and current life circumstances. What might a specific object, person, or situation symbolize for you, given your unique experiences and associations? Therefore, careful analysis, thoughtful self-reflection, and potentially professional guidance are essential when interpreting nightmares, recognizing that there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and each dream is as unique as the individual who dreams it. What does a professional dream analyst bring to the table that we might overlook on our own? In essence, nightmares can provide valuable information about potential dangers, both psychological and physical, but they must be approached with discernment, a willingness to delve into the deeper layers of the unconscious, and a healthy dose of skepticism. The most critical step, then, is to listen to the message, to heed the call to awareness, and to take appropriate action to address the underlying issues, whether they are physical, emotional, or psychological in nature. Recognize, engage, and solve. Now that we understand how nightmares can serve as warnings, how can we translate these nocturnal alerts into conscious action, forging a more proactive and resilient approach to our well-being? We are now equipped to interpret your dreams and take action to correct those things that need correcting. As we transition to the next section, remember to use the tools provided to help you work through your dreams. As we draw this exploration to a close, it's time to synthesize our understanding of nightmares, those nocturnal visitors that have, until now, been largely misunderstood. We shift from a detailed examination of individual components to a more holistic appreciation of the role these experiences play in our lives. For indeed, there can be little doubt that nightmares do play a role in our lives, shaping us in ways we have yet to fully understand. Throughout this journey, we've illuminated the hidden gifts that nightmares offer, moving beyond the conventional view of them as meaningless terrors. We have come to understand that nightmares are not merely random firings of the brain, but rather, they are valuable messengers from the unconscious, speaking to us in a symbolic language that demands our attention. Jungian dream analysis, with its emphasis on archetypes and the collective unconscious, has provided us with a powerful framework for decoding these messages, and now we find ourselves equipped to interpret their often disturbing imagery. We have learned that recurring figures and themes in nightmares represent key psychological complexes and unresolved conflicts, and most importantly, that these recurring nightmares are urgent warnings that should not be ignored. Dream journaling, active imagination, and shadow work have emerged as powerful tools for integrating nightmare messages into conscious life, tools that we can use to transform the lead of fear into the gold of self-awareness. Remember the initial questions we posed. What are nightmares, and why do we have them? How can we decode their often terrifying messages? Our understanding has evolved throughout this video, moving from a place of fear and confusion to one of curiosity and empowerment, and this transformation is perhaps the most significant takeaway of our discussion. We initially approached nightmares with trepidation, viewing them as unwelcome intrusions into our sleep. Now, we recognize that these experiences are not merely disturbances, but opportunities for growth, integration, and healing, a recognition that shifts our relationship with them entirely. We have come to see that the initial paradox of nightmares, as both terrifying and transformative, holds the key to unlocking their potential, for it is in embracing the darkness that we find the light. Even though nightmares can be scary, it's an opportunity to continue to build inner strength and further grow the inner self with the help of the tools discussed. Your nightmares are not your enemy, but your ally. They are not a sign of weakness, but a testament to your courage. They are not a curse, but a blessing in disguise, for only a curse contains no means of redemption. By embracing your nightmares, you embrace your shadow, and by embracing your shadow, you embrace yourself. No longer must you live in fear of those creatures that creep into your mind as you rest. Instead, viewers are now equipped to face the recurring figures and recurring themes, and these new skills and perspectives allow us to approach the hidden self with confidence. Remember, the journey of self-discovery is ongoing, and setbacks are inevitable. However, viewers are now equipped to face the recurring figures and recurring themes, and in this, we find the power to improve our lives and continue to build the nightmare-resilient psyche. The journey doesn't end here. Continue to explore your dreams, to engage with your shadow, and to cultivate your inner world. The more you nurture yourself, the stronger you will become, because strength is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The insights gained from this exploration of nightmares have the potential to reshape our understanding of the human psyche and inform future approaches to mental health, because the mind, like the body, has a complex defense system that can only work when fully understood. And who knows what other truths might be revealed through careful attention to dreams. And with that, we reach the end of our journey. You are capable of healing, growing, and transforming your life. Trust yourself, trust your dreams, and trust the journey.